Chapter 2023. The Moon Breeze couple instantly turned pale with fright. This Lady Z actually extracted so much life force origin energy and gave it to them? This great kindness, they really didn't know how to repay it. Shuhai Pavilion and G. Z Sheqing said indifferently, "This is all I can help you with. Take care of yourselves." The three of them said gratefully, "Don't mention it, Lady Z. Today's gift is enough for us to remember for life." Z Sheqing turned around and was about to leave when she suddenly threw a purple crystal bottle to Bu Luqing. "This is for you. You know what this is?" Bu Luqing caught it with a complicated expression on his face and said, "Yes, I know what this is." Z Sheqing was silent for a moment before she said, "Stay alive." She turned around and left. The three of them stood in the snow with complicated expressions. After a long time they sat down cross-legged and started meditating. Another place. In the secret chamber of the Zhuge clan. The Dharma Supreme sat on a red sandalwood chair, looking down expressionlessly. He said indifferently, "Is everything ready?" Yi, who was at the head of the line, replied, "The Yi clan is ready. All the required manpower has also arrived. The Ling clan is ready. The Shao clan is ready. The Shi clan is ready. The clan is ready. The Lan clan is ready. The Qin clan is ready." The last one, Zhuge Hutu, coughed and bowed. "The great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array is ready. The supreme martial artist experts of the Zhuge clan are also ready. We are just waiting for the Dharma Supreme's orders." The Dharma Supreme's deep gaze swept across everyone. He said indifferently, "This time, as a precaution, I have mobilized 50 supreme martial artist experts from the law enforcement officers. In this way, the law enforcement officers have mobilized a total of supreme martial artists. 300 of them. The 8 super clans have a total of 411 supreme martial artists. A total of 711 experts are participating in this slaying of Tao operation." The Dharma Supreme's voice was stern. "Including everyone here, Brother Wu and me, there are 771 of them. Such a lineup is unprecedented in the heavens. It was the first time in the history of the heavenly layer that so many experts had gathered together to participate in this grand event. This is the first time. The enemy's strength is unprecedentedly strong. This also appeared in the level heaven. The first extreme grade expert. Everyone, don't let your guard down." Zhuge Hutu said, "Dharma Supreme. We've already made the arrangements, but whether or not they'll come in, that still needs to be discussed." L. Shuhai Pavilion and G. A gentle smile appeared on the Dharma Supreme's face as he said indifferently, "That side has already accepted my challenge. There was no need to worry about this. They will definitely come." Zhuge Hutu was flabbergasted. He did not expect the Dharma Supreme to settle everything without a word. However, why would the other party agree to such an obvious trap? This matter was truly inconceivable. The ones who agreed to the duel were Bu Luqing, Yu Lingxue and Feng Yuro. There are 3 of them. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, "Brother Wu has already rushed to Mount Xingyun in advance to make arrangements. What everyone needs to pay attention to is our main focus. Not these 3 people. Furthermore, for some reason, even if they were chased away, they wouldn't run away. Therefore, everyone needs to be on guard against a battle to the death. Once the 3 of them arrive, the array will not be activated for the time being. Then we'll use the tactic of taking turns to exhaust them. Surround them but do not kill them. Try to make the situation as tense as possible. The more injured they are, the better. However, as long as that mysterious woman does not appear, the array will not be activated." A sinister smile appeared on the Dharma Supreme's face as he said, "Bu Liuqing's might has shaken the world, dominating the world for 10,000 years. Feng Yuro and Yu Lingshue's might has also shaken the level heaven these few years. All 3 of them are unparalleled experts. Everyone, are you interested in teasing unparalleled experts? Seeing the unparalleled experts of the past being toyed with like pigs and dogs under their own siege? Everyone, this is enough to comfort you for the rest of your lives." Everyone roared with laughter. In short, as long as that mysterious woman doesn't appear, all of you can play to your heart's content. Once that woman arrives, then at the same time that she arrives, Zhuge Hutu, you are in charge of activating the great nebula divide of heavenly secrets array immediately. From the moment that mysterious woman enters the array, fight with all your might, risking your life for her life. Injury for injury. We must kill that female attacker in the shortest time possible. No matter what kind of sacrifice we have to make, it will be worth it." The Dharma Supreme said this heavily, looking at everyone coldly. he said indifferently. Everyone, do you remember this? Yes. Yi Di was the first to speak. Rest assured, Lord Dharma Supreme. We are no longer inexperienced and know the severity of the situation. Even if we have to sacrifice our lives, we must kill that woman. Otherwise the big clans will really be finished. Good. The Dharma Supreme nodded, his gaze dark and gloomy. There's one more thing. When that woman enters the Great Array, the martial saint experts left behind to guard Tianji City must prepare a team to attack the Orchard Palace with all their might. They must kill Chu Yang and the rest. This is a two-pronged attack. The Dharma Supreme said, however, the attack cannot be launched too early. We must wait until that mysterious woman enters the array. Do you understand? Zhuge Hutu stood up, straightened his back and agreed loudly. However, everyone must take note of one thing. That disciple of Buluqing, that little girl in red, if you can capture her alive, try to keep her alive. It would be a pity to kill such an innate spirit meridian. The Dharma Supreme said solemnly. Everyone nodded in agreement, laughing bleakly. Lord Dharma Supreme still loves talent after all. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said indifferently, talent must be used by me, only then can I love it. If not, I still have to kill them. If I nurture a tiger, then I will really fail miserably and embarrass myself. Everyone burst into laughter. Also, that Chu Yang, the heaven-nourishing jade, has already been stolen. Although I don't know who did it, the person who did it is definitely not from Chu Yang's side. This means that the future trouble has been removed. And Chu Yang has already poisoned. The Dharma Supreme smiled and said, I will not say more about the importance of this battle. Everyone knows it well. I will only say one thing, the slaying of Tao battle cannot be lost. Everyone nodded solemnly. Everyone understood the importance of this battle. If they still lost with such a lineup, then the fate of the big clans would basically be sealed. There would be no hope of a comeback. Alright, everyone, disperse and make your preparations. At the same time, prepare for the heaven-nourishing jade 3 days later. The Dharma Supreme waved his hand. Everyone stood up. No matter who it was, they all had the same solemn and determined look on their faces as they walked out. The Dharma Supreme stood with his hands behind his back, watching everyone leave. In a low voice, he recited, How many heroes have shed their blood in this battle? How many heroes have not returned? Everyone. Tomorrow night I will personally host a banquet. Let us drink to our heart's content. The 8-second grandmasters shuddered. They wanted to say something, but in the end they didn't and walked out silently. There were a few people who were moved by the gesture. Orchard Palace. Chu Yang sat in front of the window. He stared at the heavy snow outside the window. This heavy snow had been falling for a total of 17 days since it started. Nearly half of the houses in Tianji City had already collapsed due to the heavy burden. The Zhuge clan was preparing for war and didn't come up with any effective measures. Instead, it was the Diwu clan under the Zhuge clan that spared no effort in providing disaster relief. The door opened and Meng Chaoran walked in, covered in snow. He smiled casually. Yang. Thinking about the great battle 3 days later again? Chu Yang smiled bitterly. Teacher, how are you? Me? I'm very happy. Meng Chaoran smiled gently. Your teacher's wife is still unconscious. I just fed her something and asked Hanwu out for a drink before she wakes up. Ah. As he spoke, he took out a plate of peanuts and a few pieces of lotus root from the cupboard with practiced ease. Then he took out a jar of wine and placed it on the table. 2 wine cups were placed opposite each other. Meng Chaoran sat down casually. He picked up the jar of wine and filled both cups with wine. He said calmly, Yang, actually, you don't have to worry about anything. Life and death are just such a boundary. It's fine as long as you work hard. Victory or defeat is determined by the heavens. Chu Yang smiled bitterly. If you take things too seriously, you'll care. If you care, you'll feel pressure. When you're under pressure, you'll feel heavy. When you feel heavy, you'll feel anxious. When you feel anxious, you'll make mistakes. Meng Chaoran said calmly, let me tell you something. Being able to accept things doesn't mean being able to let go. Being able to accept things doesn't mean being able to let go? Chu Yang murmured. Meng Chaoran was no longer paying attention to him. He raised his cup in invitation. It seemed that there was someone sitting opposite him with a smile. Meng Chaoran smiled somewhat happily. Hanwu, it's still snowing heavily today. Looking at the snowflakes, I thought of your name. Haha, dancing in the cold snow. Come. With such beautiful scenery, how can we not have a drink? As he spoke, he drained his cup in one gulp. He leaned over attentively and picked up the wine cup opposite him. He gently poured the wine onto the floor, then put it back in place and filled it up again. Every time I drink with you, you're always indignant, jealous and scolding me. Haha, you've never acknowledged me as your brother your whole life. But now you can't deny it, can you? Cheers. Chu Yang's eyes stung. He said bitterly, Teacher, there's no need to persuade me. Meng Qiaoren waved his hands. I'm not crazy nor am I deranged. I know that Hanwu has already passed away. But just because he's gone, it doesn't mean that our relationship is also gone. It's also gone. Because I'm still here. If I'm here, our relationship is here. If our relationship is here, our brother is here. If our brother is here, we must drink. We must enjoy ourselves. Meng Qiaoren said, Life and death are all the same. As he spoke, he drank another cup. Then he waved his cup at Hanwu and said with a chuckle, Don't you agree, Hanwu? Then Meng Qiaoren laughed. It's rare that we share the same view. Come, brother, let's drink. I've always thought that I owed you, but now I realize that I was wrong. I don't owe you, but you owe me. You died so heroically and gracefully, but you made me. Let's not talk about it anymore. Anyway, if there's a next life, you must repay me. Chu Yang's heart ached. He could vaguely see that opposite Meng Qiaoren, Ling Hanwu's clothes were as white as snow. There was a smile on his face as he raised his cup and drank. The corners of his eyes were full of the joy of a good friend's reunion. Chu Yang only felt a sudden itch in his throat. He held his breath and walked out quietly. He left this space for the two brothers who had been through life and death together. He quietly closed the door. From inside, Meng Qiaoren's voice could be vaguely heard as if saying, What are you worried about? To be continued. Chapter 2024. Chu Yang nodded heavily. I know. But even if it's just a little bit, I'll still do it. But what's the real reason that can affect the overall situation that you're talking about? Diwu Qingru smiled and said meaningfully, Actually, even if I don't intervene, if it's just a battle like this, they may not win and you may not lose. Chu Yang smiled lightly. Of course, but I have to fight for every bit of help, even if it's insignificant. Diwu Qingru said, Yes, but you've already helped me a lot. This time I don't owe you any favors. Chu Yang laughed out loud. You deliberately said this because you want me to remember this favor of yours. Fifth, you're too cunning. Diwu Qingru shook his head and smiled. It's not that I'm cunning, but you think too badly of me. Both of them laughed in unison. This time, the Zhuge clan has transferred a few people from the Diwu clan. Diwu Qingru's eyes flashed slightly. He said, By then they'll have the word Wu on them. Chu Yang's eyes lit up. Diwu, this time I'll definitely owe you a favor. Diwu Qingru smiled lightly. I also have my own plans. I've harmed you so many times, I have to let you get back a little. Sending charcoal and snow is always better than adding flowers to brocade. Goodbye. Thank you. Chu Yang clasped his hands and flew up like a goose feather. I'll remember your help. Diwu Qingru's voice came into his ears. Don't die. Then he pondered for a while and said, Are the people transferred from the Diwu clan already? A voice in the dark said, Of course. This time the world is really going to change. Diwu Qingru smiled lightly. If it doesn't work, there'll always be some clues to follow. Once they're discovered, they'll be destroyed together with them. If it works, the Diwu clan will rise. This is a huge gamble. Diwu Qingru stood in the snow and let out a long sigh. This is a gamble that has been passed down for tens of thousands of years. And the lives of all the people are at stake. Chu Yang's figure was hidden in the snow. He changed more than 10 directions, changed more than 10 body movements and changed more than 10 body shapes. Finally he quietly entered an inn. Nangong Shifeng and the others lived here. After Chu Yang came in, he urgently arranged for Nangong Shifeng and the others to retreat immediately. Nangong Shifeng had been collecting information for her during this period of time. Of course, the people from the big clans knew about this. After the battle, no matter what, Nangong and the others will be noticed and retaliated against. This was something that could be predicted. Even now, many people were paying attention to the movements of Nangong Shifeng and the others. During this period of time, although Nangong Shifeng and the others still looked ugly when they went out, in fact, everyone had been treated well by Chu Yang. He was no different from a normal person. Chu Yang took out a big bag of purple crystals and placed it on the table. Then he took out a few elixirs and said, The passing wind battle is about to begin. Bring your brothers and leave Tianji City immediately. If we win this battle, I will contact you guys. If we lose, don't appear in the martial world ever again. These purple crystals are enough for you to live on. Take these pills. They can cure one lie. Let's not waste any more words and hurry out of the city. The sooner the better. Nangong Shifeng was moved and said, Young Master Chu is so righteous. Am I, Nangong Shifeng, so afraid of death? Let's fight it out with them. Chu Yang patted his shoulder and said, Don't be rash. You guys are a little weak. It's not worth to lose your lives for nothing. He urged them again and finally convinced them. But their eyes were already full of tears. In their ugly lives, no one was willing to look them in the eye. Only Chu Yang treated them sincerely. This feeling of being respected, relied on and cared for was unforgettable for Nangong Shifeng. Chu Yang asked Wei Wuyin and the others and found out that they had already left Tianji City long ago. Their whereabouts were unknown. Only then did he feel relieved. Under Chu Yang's arrangement, Nangong Shifeng and the others washed away the color on their faces. Then they disguised themselves and walked out one by one. They went back and forth a few times, brought back wine and dishes and placed them on the table. The fragrance of wine spread far and wide. But Nangong Shifeng and the others who were supposed to be in the inn had already disappeared without a trace. After a long time, Chu Yang leaped up and took a big detour. After checking the spots, he returned to the Orchard Palace. After returning, Chu Yang immediately found Dong Wuxiang and Rui Budong. The three brothers disguised themselves again. Dressed in white, they disappeared into the wind and snow. Why do you want to catch these people? Rui Budong looked at the men and women in his hands and was a little puzzled. Chu Yang took out a piece of paper and looked at it. He said, This guy gave me really good stuff. These guys are the illegitimate children of several important people in the Zhuge clan. Illegitimate children usually have a kind of love and guilt. So, it can tug at their heartstrings even more. Chu Yang said, Hide these guys well and then go catch others. The three of them ran back and forth in the wind and thunder. Until late at night they actually caught more than 30 people. Among them, there were the illegitimate children of important people in the Zhuge clan. There were also the mistresses of some people in other clans and contacts of some important business channels. They also looted 2 secret treasure troves of the Zhuge clan and 8 shops of the Zhuge clan according to the directions of Diwu Qingrou's 2 maps. They swept away all the important and valuable things. In particular, several important intelligence contacts were directly killed by the 3 of them. That night, everyone in Tianji City was in a state of panic. The Zhuge clan was in a mess that night. There were fights, investigations, crying wives, screaming wives. There were people cursing in exasperation. These will be useful but it won't affect the overall situation, Dong Wuxiang said with certainty. Of course we're also trying our best. Send out the information of these people. No matter what, let's create chaos for a while first. Jiang sneered. Especially when the clan is in chaos, it's impossible for the supreme martial artist experts to not be affected. Even if it's just a little bit of impatience, it will also have an effect. Besides, control the hostages well. If they want to deal with us, they will definitely be led by someone from the Zhuge clan. Among these people we control, as long as one of them is the family member of the leading expert from the Zhuge clan, then we can be in a stalemate for a while. Chu Yang said, With our current strength we can't help at all in the battle over there. However, we must not let them have any worries. Under the efforts of Chu Yang and the rest, the entire Tianji city was filled with complaints in the shortest amount of time. In these 2 days there were curses everywhere. All the big and small people in Tianji City were affected. The business of the Zhuge clan was almost paralyzed. Rumors about every important person were flying all over the place. There was even a group of people who were secretly adding fuel to the fire. Many people anxiously finished their clan meetings, their hearts heavy and gloomy. When they returned home they were badly beaten by their wives. There were even people who killed their wives out of anger. At first the people from the other clans were happy to watch the show. However, later on they realized that the storm was getting more and more intense. When there were faint signs of panic they wanted to stop it, but it was already not something that could be done in a day or two. This matter also made Zhuge Hutu a little frustrated and irritable. Although he knew that this was the enemy's trick, he just couldn't control himself from lashing out. In such a torturous situation, it was finally the 3rd day. The Venerable One nourished the heavens. Early in the morning, the Dharma Supreme and the rest were already done with their preparations. They gathered at the entrance of the medicine banquet and stood solemnly under the dancing snowflakes. Zhuge Hutu's expression was very bad. His clan brother actually had so many shameful things. This made Zhuge Hutu feel a little ashamed in front of the others. The Dharma Supreme walked out slowly. His gaze swept across and he said, Is everyone ready? Ready. Everyone present shouted at the same time. The Li clan was absent. The Dharma Supreme had chosen one of his two great guards to participate in the Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens. Good. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, when the array is activated, a hole will appear in the void. Everyone send these pieces of heaven nourishing jade into the hole at the same time. And use all the energy in your body to seal the hole. Only when the hole disappears can you withdraw your energy. The Dharma Supreme said indifferently, I will preside over the array. There are 200 supreme martial artists outside. Everyone can do it without worry. Okay. Yi Di and the rest nodded solemnly. The Dharma Supreme heaved a long sigh of relief and stood still. The next moment he suddenly rose into the air and floated in the air, as if he was weightless, slowly flying up. Wherever he flew, the snowflakes would automatically melt away. In the snowy sky, his black robe was actually so dazzling. He flew 100 feet into the air. The Dharma Supreme shouted, activate the array. In an instant, 200 experts activated their energy at the same time, activating the array that was already prepared underground. A dazzling white light suddenly shot out from the ground. It was at least a few feet thick and shone directly on the Dharma Supreme's body. The Dharma Supreme's body was stimulated by this white light. His long hair suddenly stood up and danced in the air. His black robe fluttered violently and he shot 1,000 feet into the air like a shooting star. His body suddenly emitted a dazzling white light. He shook his arms and shouted, heaven, boundless cold, awe-inspiring water, vast mountains, I am willing to turn my body into a tribulation and nourish the heavens with my loyal heart and blood. Before he finished his sentence, as if he had activated a type of mysterious energy between heaven and earth, the whole world suddenly trembled. The mountains and rivers around Tianji City also trembled at this moment. The trembling became more and more intense. Gradually, from far to near, from heaven to earth, waves of clear ripples appeared and swept towards them. The Dharma Supreme shouted, heaven take pity on me. Activate the nourishing of the heavens. In midair there was a loud boom of thunder. It was early in the morning and in the middle of winter, but there was actually thunder rumbling violently. The snowy sky suddenly turned pitch black. A perfectly round hole suddenly appeared in this pitch black land, 1,000 feet above the Dharma Supreme's head. Chapter 2025. Every hole that appeared out of nowhere shone with sparkling white light. They formed a huge circle, and in the middle was the Dharma Supreme's proud figure. The Dharma Supreme let out a long howl. His eyes shot out a sharp black ray and his body emitted a white light, locking onto the hole. Do it! The Dharma Supreme shouted. All the supreme martial artists rose into the air at the same time. When they were 100 feet into the air, that white light pierced through their bodies. From this person to that person the edges and corners were distinct. It was as if a huge quadrilateral had appeared in the air. The heaven-nourishing jade in everyone's hands emitted a pure white light. A strange rhythm of life was suddenly produced at this moment. The next moment each of them took up a hole. Yidi was the first. Shaosei was the second. The big clans were arranged according to the order of the tribulation, all the way to the 8th. The supreme martial artist of the law enforcement officers took up the position. Everyone's expressions were stern as they sent the heaven-nourishing jade in their hands into the hole at the same time. At this moment, the heaven-nourishing jade actually emitted a kind of life force that made one's soul tremble. Then it disappeared. However, all the supreme martial artists clearly felt their hearts soften and tremble violently. Then each of them went up at the same time and used the position of their hearts to block the hole in front of them. At this moment all the cultivation in their bodies poured out violently. White light surrounded the Dharma Supreme as he stood in the center. Streaks of holy white light were emitted from his body, and then streaks of white light were sent back to his body. The Dharma Supreme kept his eyes closed throughout this process. However, every strand of his hair was already standing straight, and every strand was emitting a faint black aura. The next moment, the hole in the sky gradually dimmed, the entrance of the cave seemed to be slowly shrinking back. With a thunderous rumble, the two holes disappeared at the same time. All the supreme martial artists vomited blood at the same time and fell from the sky. There was a flash of colorful light in the sky, and then it disappeared without a trace. The Dharma Supreme slowly opened his eyes. There was a black light in his eyes, and an uncontrollable smile appeared at the corners of his mouth as he slowly descended. All the supreme martial artists felt it at the same time. After this incident, it seemed like something was missing. However, after careful inspection, yet nothing was missing. It was just that their internal organs were badly shaken. Thank you for your hard work. The Dharma Supreme landed gracefully on the ground. With his hands behind his back, he smiled and said, Everyone must have been shaken up. The injuries this time are not considered light. Everyone don't take this lightly. Quickly circulate your energy and recover. Tomorrow there will be an important battle. As he spoke, he took out a pill and distributed it to everyone. After helping Jizun consume the medicine, Zhang Xian immediately felt a warmth in his heart, and his entire body felt much more comfortable. They only felt that it did not take long for their cultivation to recover completely. They could not help but feel puzzled. Because the Dharma Supreme had said that the injury this time was not considered light. Since it wasn't light, how could it be healed so easily? The Dharma Supreme sighed. Everyone will not be able to detect it yet. However, I would like to remind everyone that the Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens earlier wasn't just about the heaven-nourishing jade or cultivation. Instead, I extracted a portion of your life origin energy. He sighed deeply and exhaled deeply. With his hands clasped behind his back, he spoke in a solemn voice. Brothers, for heaven. For the sake of the family's 10,000 years of inheritance, this time. You may not be able to recover the life essence you have lost, or it may take you a long time to recover. Do you regret it? They looked at each other and smiled. I see, it's just a little bit of life essence. Everyone has lived for so long, what is a little bit of life essence? Moreover, if this action can bring about the destruction of the tribulation and allow our family clan to prosper for another 10,000 years, so what if we die? The Dharma Supreme was touched. Good brothers. With a wave of his hand, all the experts on guard hurried over. Escort all the brothers back. Everyone, take care of yourselves in tomorrow's battle. The Dharma Supreme nourishing the heavens had come to an end. However, the Dharma Supreme paced back and forth at the same spot for a long time, as if he was reminiscing, as if he was feeling melancholy. His expression was deep and his brows were tightly knitted. Heavy snow fell. The Dharma Supreme's figure walked back and forth in the heavy snow. No one dared to disturb him. They knew that the Dharma Supreme was feeling gratified for the safety of the people and the world at this moment, and, feeling melancholy, therefore, everyone only quietly guarded from afar, silently guarding. In the heavy snow, the Dharma Supreme followed the traces of nourishing the heavens and actually walked for 4 hours. If one was observant, one would be able to calculate that the Dharma Supreme had walked around the circle of nourishing the heavens for a total of 100 rounds. Then the Dharma Supreme took a deep breath. His face was as white as snow. The next moment, with a puff, he spat out a long stream of black gas. At the same time, thick black smoke came out of his 7 orifices. With a cough, a mouthful of fresh blood was spat out onto the snowy ground. The Dharma Supreme panted for a while and used the back of his hand to gently wipe away the blood at the corner of his mouth. He muttered, Dongfang Bidao, you are really stubborn. However, you have still been completely erased by me today. Suddenly he laughed strangely and said, all in all, the life essence of 81 supreme martial artists. It's about time. With a turn of his body, he disappeared without a trace. Until an hour after he disappeared, there was still black gas lingering around here and it slowly dissipated. Until 3 days after he disappeared, that mouthful of blood was still in the snowy ground, brightly colored. The heavy snow actually couldn't cover it. Dawn. The sky was still dark. Well, strictly speaking, it was still the middle of the night. Chu Yang's divine senses moved. He only felt that there seemed to be someone moving in the courtyard. Then it disappeared. Chu Yang's lips curled into a wry smile. Bu Luqing and Moon Breeze had already left. After all, they were experts. If they went in advance, they could at least get a feel of the terrain. They could also give the other party a feeling of, I have nothing to fear, I am very confident in myself. When he returned last night, Chu Yang had already told Bu Luqing and Moon Breeze not to kill those with the word 5 on their clothes. At critical moments, they could break out in the direction of these few people. In the end, the 3 of them burst out laughing. Break out? With such a deep blood feud, were they going to give up just like that? This made Chu Yang extremely speechless. Deep blood feud. But Moon Breeze had already tolerated it for 10,000 years. Even if they couldn't find out the truth for 10,000 years, didn't they still come through? If the Dharma Supreme didn't say anything, wouldn't they be kept in the dark forever? But why did the Dharma Supreme say it? Wasn't it to kill them? The feud had been going on for 10,000 years. Couldn't it be done slowly? There was also Bu Luqing. Even if Ning Qinya was dead and you wanted to avenge him, did it have to be today? With your cultivation you could come and go like a ghost to kill the enemy. Couldn't you? But Chu Yang also knew that today's battle was not really about revenge. Rather, it was about venting the pent-up resentment. If this resentment couldn't be vented, no one would feel good about it. But, if they wanted to vent this resentment they might have to pay with their lives. A timid knock came from the door. Chu Yang opened the door and saw Mo Qingwu hugging the blanket. She stood at the door, cowering a little. I'm scared. Chu Yang felt sorry for her and hurriedly pulled her in. What's wrong? Teacher left just now and told me to take good care of myself. The more I thought about it, the more scared I became. I couldn't sleep. Mo Qingwu said tearfully, so I came to look for you. But I slept very late last night. I'm so sleepy. Chu Yang stretched his neck. Can I sleep here? Mo Qingwu looked at him pitifully. Chu Yang, I'm so scared. Chu Yang's eyes widened. Sleep here? Looking at the little girl's somewhat curvy figure, young Master Chu swallowed and felt his throat dry up. His lower body also felt like it was going to rise up. He hurriedly clamped his legs together and laughed dryly. Qingwu, you're still young. You must know that men and women are different. This, sharing a bed it's precisely because I'm still young that I'm not scared. Mo Qingwu looked at Chu Yang with her round black eyes and giggled. Brother Chu Yang wouldn't be such a beast, right? Even a little girl like me would want to harm you? Chu Yang was stunned. This little girl, where did she learn to speak like this? On the other side, Mo Qingwu had already happily hugged the blanket to the side of the bed and moved Chu Yang's blanket in. She put her fragrant blanket on the bed and then took off her coat. It turned out that she was only wearing thin pajamas inside. It's so cold. The little girl shivered and squeezed into the blanket like a fish. She didn't forget to take out her long hair from under the blanket. She spread it to one side of the pillow and tilted her head. Chu Yang, aren't you going to sleep? I'll sleep, sleep. Chu Yang bent his body and clamped his legs together. With a bang, he clumsily climbed onto the bed. He only felt that he was about to catch fire. Your posture is so weird, the little girl said. Aha! Weird? Minister Chu hurriedly wrapped himself tightly in the blanket. Only then did he breathe a sigh of relief. He only felt that his lower body was as hard as steel and was extremely high-spirited. He couldn't help but complain in his heart. Little girl, aren't you tormenting me? Weird posture, isn't it all because of you? The next moment his cheeks itched. The little girl came over and put her red lips next to his ear. She said, Brother Chu Yang. This cry was actually tender and soft. Chu Yang's whole body shuddered as he heard it. He muttered, Demon? The next moment the little girl put her head on Chu Yang's pillow. She reached out and grabbed Chu Yang's arm. She stuffed it under her head and then hugged Chu Yang's arm with both hands. She said with infinite happiness, I'm not afraid now. You're not afraid, but I'm afraid. Chu Yang's heart was somewhat powerless. Jiang, do you think my master will win? Since she was no longer afraid, the little girl began to ask the question she was most concerned about. You will definitely win. Chu Yang looked straight at the ceiling. His body was as straight as a zombie as he muttered unconsciously. Really? The little girl became excited. She raised her head and looked at him with sparkling eyes. To be continued. Chapter 2026. Your teacher is the number one in the world. Chu Yang murmured. Yes, number one in the world. It seemed as if these 4 words had given the little girl unlimited confidence. She immediately felt relieved and lay back down. It was unknown what she had thought of, but she giggled twice. Then she rolled over and turned over to face Chu Yang. Chu Yang, what are you thinking about? I'm thinking of doing you on the spot. Chu Yang roared in his heart, but he said with an aggrieved expression, Nothing. But your face is so red. The little girl put her hand on Chu Yang's forehead. Your head is so hot. Is it a fever? I am feverish, my whole body is feverish. Chu Yang murmured in his heart and begged for mercy. Qingwu, sleep. There may be a battle tomorrow. Mo Qingwu nodded and stretched. Suddenly, her eyes turned and she thought of something. She leaned close to Chu Yang's ear and asked in a low voice, Chu Yang, do you like women with big breasts? Mo Qingwu's little mouth was right next to Chu Yang's ear. Her warm breath blew into his ear. Her breath smelled like orchids. Chu Yang only felt itchy and soft. He almost lost his mind on the spot. He moaned, Little girl, don't ask such an impure question. Mo Qingwu snorted. Her eyes turned and she suddenly lifted her blanket. The next moment she lifted Chu Yang's blanket and giggled. Before Chu Yang could react, she had already burrowed into Chu Yang's blanket. Chu Yang's whole body stiffened. He felt a chill on his neck. The little girl's tender arms had already wrapped around him. She giggled and said, Chu Yang? Hugging you to sleep is the most comfortable. As she said, she rested her head on Chu Yang's chest. Chuyang grimaced. He quietly moved his body and clamped her head between his legs. His breathing became more and more rapid. You're disobedient. Hurry up and sleep. You want to sleep now? Emo Qingwu giggled. She pouted and kissed Chuyang's mouth with her rosy lips. Sleep. She closed her eyes. Chuyang really felt like he was going to die. He was suffocating. He was going to explode. Your body is getting hotter and hotter, Emo Qingwu whispered. Chuyang felt a weight on his body as the little girl's thigh pressed down on him. She hugged his neck with both hands and rested her head on his shoulder. Her thigh pressed heavily on his lower abdomen as she muttered complacently. Then she breathed lightly. He was actually about to fall asleep. Chuyang felt that his whole body was on fire. He was about to be burned by the raging flames. He hastily recited the clear heart incantation. However, he was getting more and more upset. His body was sticky and sweaty. The little girl seemed to have fallen asleep. Chuyang slowly loosened his legs. His face was twisted and he was speechless. How was he going to spend the night? What is this? Emo Qingwu muttered with a frown. She closed her eyes and reached down to grab something. He bent it to the side. Hiss. Chuyang sucked in a breath of air. He barely managed to turn his body sideways to avoid the sharp edge. Chuyang himself didn't know how he had managed to get through this night. He counted with his eyes wide open. After counting for 2 hours, his mind slowly calmed down. Then he felt a wave of happiness, peace, and comfort. The person he loved was in his arms. All his regrets had been made up for. At this point in life, what more could he ask for? Chuyang sighed blissfully. At this moment, Emo Qingwu in his arms frowned. Her face showed a pained and sorrowful expression. Her body twisted as if she was about to wake up, but she didn't. She seemed to be dreaming. Chuyang hugged her gently and tenderly. The person in his arms calmed down. Chuyang was about to fall asleep in a daze. Suddenly he felt a little wet on his chest. He looked over and saw that Emo Qingwu's eyes were tearing up continuously, but she obviously wasn't awake yet. I'm dreaming again. Chuyang sighed. Suddenly he was shocked. Dreaming again? What kind of dream was she having? Could it be? Emo Qingwu's mouth opened slightly. She panted quickly and said, Don't let me leave. Chuyang held his breath. But after Emo Qingwu said this, she didn't speak for a long time. She just couldn't stop crying. After a long time, Chuyang was a little confused. He was about to close his eyes when suddenly, his chest tightened. Emo Qingwu's little hand grabbed his collar tightly. She closed her eyes and cried. Her little hand was so tight that her knuckles turned white, but she refused to let go. Only her tears flowed. Chuyang sighed. He was about to hold her completely in his arms when suddenly, Emo Qingwu tightened her grip even more. She grabbed his collar and said intermittently, Chuyang, there's a next life. Look at me one more time. I'm prettier than a sword. Chuyang's whole body shook. He was dumbfounded. His eyes suddenly widened. But there was no light in his eyes. Only tears flowed quietly. Qingwu, you finally achieved this dream? I'm prettier than a sword. I'm prettier than a sword. Chuyang's heart began to ache as if it was overturning rivers and seas. Mount Xingyun. It was said that this was the place where the stars fell. Legend had it that when the Almighty was folding the heavens, he accidentally made a big move and caused the surrounding stars to fall down neatly. After burning the air, they fell to the sky above the level heaven continent. Seeing that the newly folded level heaven continent was about to be destroyed, the Almighty was very unhappy. Hence, he waved his hand and collected all the fallen stars. He crumpled them into a ball and threw them to the level heaven continent. After this piece was thrown down, it became a mountain range made up entirely of meteorites. The entire mountain range was a single entity. It couldn't be separated at all. And it was hard. No divine weapon could separate it from Mount Xingyun. Even a rock the size of a fingernail. And legend had it that this mountain had the power of the stars and was full of miracles. And the reason why the Zhuge clan chose to build a city here was because they saw the unlimited mysterious power of Mount Xingyun. And the great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was carved on Mount Xingyun. Then, it activated the secrets of heaven and attracted the power of the stars to complete this array. To a certain extent, this great nebula divide array of heavenly secrets was a product of heaven and earth. Ever since the formation of this array, the Zhuge clan had never succeeded in building a second array of the same kind. Could also be said to be the only array in the world. When Bu Luqing and Moon Breeze set foot on this mountain, the night was hazy and it was snowing heavily. The three of them walked up step by step from the foot of the mountain, admiring the scenery along the way. I heard that this mountain is the #1 mystical object in the heavens. Yu Lingxue smiled and said, I have been here several times. With my cultivation I can't dig out the rocks on this side of the mountain. It is really hard. Bu Luqing rolled his eyes and pointed at the mountain. He said, there is only one thing that I am curious about now, in such a hard place, these trees. How did they grow here? Moon Breeze and Moon Breeze smiled bitterly together. This matter was really inexplicable. Bu Luqing walked to the front of a tree. He smiled lightly and stretched out his hand. This small tree that was as thick as the mouth of a bowl was cut in half. Looking closer they could see dense growth rings at the cut. It was impossible to count them all. They were completely connected. This is an ordinary tree that has grown here for at least 10,000 years, and it is only as thick as the mouth of a bowl. But its weight is comparable to star iron. Bu Luqing weighed the tree in his hand and said lightly, if it is made into a stick for someone, it can really smash a martial saint to death. He pondered and said, an ordinary tree. Just because of the different environment it grew in, it can cause such a result. If it is a human, what will happen? Moon Breeze and Moon Breeze were also deep in thought. Bu Luqing waved his hand and the accumulated snow on the ground was pushed away, revealing the dark stone ground. The pine tree's roots grew in a thin crack, flat and flat. Bu Luqing bent down and dug his finger into the crevice of the stone and pulled with all his might. The crack didn't move at all. Bu Luqing's finger made a cracking sound. Bu Luqing withdrew his hand and stood up. He said somewhat awkwardly, did you see that? Even with my cultivation I can't move a rock on Mount Xingyun. Cough cough. Feng Yuro laughed instantly. Yu Lingxue also couldn't help but laugh. He said, Brother Bu, what I saw was, although this mountain is hard and we can't move it, the soft tree roots can take root in it and grow into a towering tree. So, no matter how meticulous a plan is, there will still be loopholes. Bu Luqing perked up and said, you're right. I wanted to say this just now but my finger hurt and I forgot. Feng Yuro finally laughed without caring about her image. The three of them laughed together. When they came they were still a little nervous. But in this laughter, it disappeared without a trace. The three of them, one in front and two behind, walked leisurely towards the peak of the mountain. The Dharma Supreme stood at the peak of the mountain with his hands behind his back. Hearing the laughter coming from the foot of the mountain, a strange smile appeared on his face. How carefree. Even at this point they can still laugh. At the side, Wu Jueqing sat on a pitch-black rock and said indifferently, they won't be able to laugh soon. The Dharma Supreme laughed and suddenly let out a long whistle. He said softly, Brother Yu, are you here? Yu Lingshua's voice came from the mountainside. Bah! Dharma Supreme, what right do you have to call me brother? The Dharma Supreme laughed and said, Brother Yu, for more than 10,000 years to be treated like this by you, it's really disappointing. Even if you insist on supporting the Tribulation Sword Master, you don't have to be so ruthless. Yu Lingxue was furious. Just as he was about to speak, he suddenly heard a cold voice. Bu Luqing, come here and accept your death. Bu Luqing flew into a rage and shouted, Wu Jueqing, you despicable person. Why, you still want to bully others with your ancestors' power? Let me tell you, I won't fall for it. Poor Supreme Martial Artist Chen Feng, his bloodline is going to end today. Wu Jueqing's cold voice came down. Bu Luqing, you can't kill anyone with just your mouth. Bu Luqing laughed. I can't kill anyone but I can disgust you. I'm happy to disgust you. Haha, disgust the descendants of Chen Feng and Lu Yun, it's really satisfying. On the other side, Wu Jueqing didn't say anything. However, a substantial murderous aura gradually took form and swept over wildly, covering the skies and covering the earth. Today is Deputy Moderator Tian's birthday. I wish her a happy birthday. However, everyone calls her Dao Dao and there are some who call her Second Dao or Jing Dao, Fart Dao. In short, there are many deputy moderators named Dao Dao, and I won't list them all here. In short, I wish her a happy birthday. Every year there will be a day like this. Brother Ao, sure, I'll be happy with you. Brother, happy birthday. G, I'll continue to write the 10th update. G, to be continued. Chapter 2027. Wu Jueqing's voice was as cold as ice. Come, let's fight. Bu Luqing snorted and said, Come down, I'll fight you. Silence reigned again. Bu Luqing may be straightforward, but he was definitely not stupid. Today's situation was obviously a trap and a plot. It was one thing for him to come for Ning Tianya's safety, but it definitely didn't mean that he would foolishly step into the enemy's well-planned trap. You want me to go? To be schemed against by you? I want you to come down. Wu Jueqing said indifferently. You don't dare to come? Bu Luqing crossed his arms and stood at the mountainside. He said arrogantly, do I have to go just because you want me to? Who do you think you are? Why you don't dare to come down? Wu Jueqing laughed. Don't you want to know about Ning Tianya's news? Bu Luqing laughed. If old Ning is dead, he will also be dead if I go. If old Ning is still alive, he will still be alive even if I don't go. Wu Jueqing, I only have one motive for coming here today, and that is to kill you. Wu Jueqing sneered. The two parties, one at the mountaintop and the other at the mountainside, were actually in a stalemate. At this moment, the Dharma Supreme laughed coldly. The famous Bu Luqing, the #1 sword supremacy in the world, actually doesn't dare to come down. He doesn't dare to face the enemy's challenge. And the Moon Breeze couple who dominated the three heavens together actually cowered in the face of the enemy who killed their master. Haha, how funny, how funny. Yu Lingshua's expression changed. Bu Luqing stopped him with his gaze and laughed loudly. One of the famous tribulations, the descendant of two legendary figures in the heavens, not only is he despicable, he actually doesn't dare to come down the mountain for a battle. Does he have no other abilities other than using the name of his ancestors to scare people? After living for tens of thousands of years, he is actually still a good for nothing? No wonder he was used by others for a lifetime. He almost became the mud used to mend the heavens. Of course, the most praiseworthy is still the Dharma Supreme of the generation, actually starting to speak sarcastically, using insults to provoke others. Do you have any other ideas? Bu Luqing mocked him with sarcasm. A long howl from the mountaintop. After living for tens of thousands of years, he is actually still a good for nothing? No wonder he had been used by others for an entire lifetime and had almost become the mud used to mend the heavens. These words had really poked at Wu Jueqing's sore spot. He couldn't hold it in any longer and let out a long howl. His white robe fluttered and his sleeves fluttered. With a loud boom, the accumulated snow on the entire mountain collapsed. At the same time he flew up. At the same time, his thin, white-clothed silhouette shot down from the mountaintop like a bolt of lightning. Bu Luqing laughed heartily. You really don't have any self-restraint. It came down on its own. I looked down on you. Even though Bu Luqing said that he was looking down on Wu Jueqing, he had already unsheathed his sword. With the roar of a dragon and a tiger, 10,000 rays of sword light wrapped around Bu Luqing's body and charged towards Wu Jueqing. With this charge, the flashing sword light was like millions of people unsheathing their swords at the same time. The entire Mount Xingyun resonated with the sound of swords. Clang! Bu Luqing was furious. Wu Jueqing, who do you think you are? To think that so many supreme martial artists would be sent out to ambush them for a decisive battle. What a disgrace to our ancestors. Wu Jueqing's face and ears turned red. That sword hummed just now. It was the sound of the supreme sword being unsheathed and all the swords in the world paying homage to it. Wu Jueqing and the Dharma Supreme had calculated countless possibilities, but they had forgotten about this. This was definitely the will of the heavens. If the battle had already begun and was in full swing, with so many people attacking at once, even if Bu Luqing scolded, he wouldn't have made Wu Jueqing feel so uncomfortable. Because at that time, everyone would be fighting and facing life-threatening danger at any time. Who would have the time to think about the meaning of this? As for after the battle, the winner would be the king and the loser would be the thief. This was even less of a problem. But the problem was that before the battle had even begun and before both sides had even warmed up, the unsheathed sword of the other side had caused the swords of hundreds of people on their side to hum at the same time. This was like a hard slap on Wu Jueqing's face, extremely painful and unbearable. Yu Lingxue laughed loudly. To think that the two elders, Qin Feng and Lu Yun, were such heroes back then. Who would have thought that their descendants would actually be such characters? This is really a pity? Anger rose in Wu Jueqing's heart. His face flushed red and he chuckled. Then let's sigh more while we still can. Suddenly he raised his hands and waved them in the air. Instantly, the whole area within a radius of a few hundred miles was filled with colorless and odorless poisonous gas. Then his white robe fluttered and he pounced on Bu Luqing. Bu Luqing's sword shook and suddenly, a mountain appeared out of thin air. A sword mountain. It came crashing down on Wu Jueqing crazily. But once Bu Luqing made this move, Wu Jueqing instantly knew that he had been deceived by Ning Tianya that day. Because this attack of Bu Luqing's was not inferior to Ning Tianya's strongest attack that day. That damned Ning Tianya. Wu Jueqing cursed angrily in his heart. If not for the fact that they had such a miraculous item like the sword intent, which greatly exceeded Ning Tianya's expectations, Ning Tianya might really beat them at their own game and use them to deal with them. The sword aura emitted by this attack of Bu Liuqing's made Wu Jueqing feel a little apprehensive. Once an expert made a move, the truth would be known. Wu Jueqing's wrist shook in the air and a long black whip suddenly appeared in the air. It shook against the wind and shattered the thousands of snowflakes in the air along with Bu Liuqing's sword mountain. Sword light shot out. Bu Liuqing swung his sword and it was as if he had split the sky and earth apart. He laughed loudly and said, "Wu Jueqing, this attack shall be called Morning Wind Slash. What do you think?" Actually, this attack naturally had another name. But Bu Liuqing said it deliberately to provoke Wu Jueqing. Arrogant. Wu Jueqing shouted coldly and lashed out with his whip. The whip's shadows formed many small circles in the air and surrounded Bu Liuqing's sword light. The long whip coiled and intertwined with the long sword. The two of them suddenly changed from attacking from afar to close combat. With a loud bang, Bu Liuqing struck out with his left palm and Wu Jueqing struck out with his right palm. Boom. The snow on the ground flew up violently. Bu Liuqing's sword shook and he flew into the air. Wu Jueqing followed closely behind, his long whip coiling wildly. As expected of a poison doctor. Even your attacks are poisonous. Bu Liuqing swung his left hand. Don't put on an act in front of me. With your cultivation before your protective internal energy is broken, this little poison won't be able to harm you. This little bit of poison won't be able to do anything to you. Wu Jueqing shouted coldly, his attacks becoming fiercer and fiercer. Bu Liuqing laughed loudly. The descendant of Morning Wind is indeed as smart as a child prodigy. Wu Jueqing shut his mouth and stopped talking nonsense with him. He could tell that although this sword supremacy looked cold and ruthless, the moment he opened his mouth, it was a huge fucking shit pit. Bickering with him could really infuriate one to death. Bu Liuqing attacked the enemy relentlessly with his words, but he had his own plans in mind. As he fought. At the same time, he observed the surrounding terrain to see where he could set up an ambush. He could strike at any time and kill a few people to warm up his hands. If he killed too many people, an ambush would no longer be an ambush. But when he looked around, he didn't discover anything. If it wasn't for the sword chime earlier that told him that there were too many enemies here, he might have thought that there was no one here. Where did they hide? Thoughts flashed through Bu Liuqing's mind, but his sword didn't relax at all. He exchanged blow after blow with Wu Jueqing. In terms of internal energy cultivation, Bu Liuqing was inferior to Wu Jueqing. There was no doubt that he was inferior by more than a level. However, at this moment he actually did not fall into a disadvantageous position. From the start of the battle until now, the two of them had been fighting in the air 100 feet high. They didn't go higher or lower. If they went higher, they would match what they said earlier. It was Bu Liuqing who listened to Wu Jueqing and went up. But if they went lower, Wu Jueqing would be at a disadvantage. So the two of them fought at a height that was neither too high nor too low. Bu Liuqing let out a long laugh. He flicked his sword and a dragon-like roar sounded. He mocked, "The descendant of Morning Wind is nothing more than this. The tribulation of tens of thousands of years is nothing more than this." Wu Jueqing was fuming with anger. It was because Ning Tianya had said the same thing when he intercepted him that day. And not only was every word the same, even the tone was the same. How could Wu Jueqing not be angry? This meant that these two fellows didn't care about Morning Wind at all. Otherwise they wouldn't have said the same thing. Just as he was about to attack, he saw Bu Liuqing retreating abruptly. With a roll of his body, the sword light trembled and transformed into a brilliant rainbow. The sword light was like a barrel. It was several feet thick, but its length seemed to be endless. Bu Liuqing's whole body was hidden in the sword light. He flew over like a rainbow. Man and sword as one. Wu Jueqing snorted. His long whip danced in the air and shook. With a loud bang, a black epiphyllum suddenly appeared. Wu Jueqing shouted and pushed with both hands. This black epiphyllum welcomed Bu Liuqing's man and sword as one. Then the long whip shook and the black epiphyllum flew out one by one. Epiphyllum pistol. This was obviously an ultimate sword technique, but it was used by Wu Jueqing with a whip of a different nature. And its power didn't decrease but increased instead. Bu Liuqing sneered. Epiphyllum pistol can't stop the sword supremacy. Just like that, the epiphyllum broke under his sword one after another. Wu Jueqing raised his whip and used it as a sword. Similarly, he used the man and sword as one and rushed forward. He sneered. Sword supremacy? You're not worthy. The two of them collided with a loud bang. Wu Jueqing did a roll and somersaulted 17 to 18 times in the air, reaching a height of 400 to 500 feet. Bu Luqing, on the other hand, floated out at an angle. His green robes left a white mark in the wind. Wu Jueqing snorted and was about to use his sword intent. He purposely used a battle method that he wasn't good at to fight Bu Luqing just for this moment. Just as he was about to attack, he suddenly felt a gust of wind behind him and a murderous aura. Startled, he hurriedly dashed out. With a thud, Wu Jueqing's shoulder was hit. His white robes were torn and blood flowed out. His calf was hit and blood dripped out. He hurriedly circulated his energy to stop it, but his face was already full of anger and astonishment. Sword light flashed and the Moon Breeze couple attacked at the same time, attacking Wu Jueqing with their two swords as one. Just now, it was actually the husband and wife who joined forces to launch a sneak attack. Be it Wu Jueqing, the Dharma Supreme, or even Bu Luqing, they were all greatly surprised by this. No one would have thought that the Moon Breeze couple, who had always been known for their gentlemanly demeanor, would actually launch a sneak attack. Yu Lingshua's expression was calm. Only you guys are allowed to set up despicable traps, but I'm not allowed to launch a sneak attack? What kind of logic is this? 10 chapters. If you can imagine what I look like now, I'll call you brothers. 7 packs of cigarettes and a box and a half of Red Bull in 2 days and 2 nights? But 10 chapters. Got it. Begging for votes. A very crazy begging. To be continued. Chapter 2028. Zhuge Changchang looked a little pitiful. He looked at Chu Yang expectantly. He knew that his life was now in Chu Yang's hands. And L. Shuhai Pavilion NG. Web. Where is my third uncle now? Once Chu Yang heard Zhuge Changchang say, to buy medicine for his daughter, he knew that this news was definitely true. If not for Chu Yang, the Zhuge clan wouldn't even pay attention to Chu Feiyan, a small fry in their eyes. In the dungeon of the Zhuge clan. Zhuge Changchang hurriedly replied, don't worry, he's not dead. Chu Yang's eyes were sharp. Was he tortured by you? Zhuge Changchang hesitated for a while and said, Brother Chu, you also know that this is unavoidable when you first enter. However, we have already instructed that no matter what, his life is not to be harmed. Chu Yang chuckled coldly. His heart ached. He knew that since Zhuge Changchang said so, Chu Feiyan must have been tortured badly. Otherwise, Zhuge Changchang wouldn't have explained so hurriedly. A thin figure seemed to appear in front of him. For his daughter's illness, he was in the prime of his life and had been running around in the wilderness for many years. Whenever he found treasures, even if he didn't need them, he would quickly keep them and exchange them for purple crystals. However, he couldn't bear to spend a single cent. He saved them to buy medicine for his daughter. As long as he heard that there was medicine, he would rush over at full speed. Day after day, year after year. For his daughter, he was tired just to give his daughter a healthy body. He carried a slim and almost impossible hope and traveled all over the world. How much did he suffer? Did anyone know? Now, for his daughter's medicine, he came all the way to Tianji City. However, because of a nephew that appeared out of nowhere, he was imprisoned by the Zhuge clan and suffered all kinds of torture. Chulu finally couldn't take it anymore. She suddenly burst into tears. Good. What a Zhuge clan. It's really a big clan in name. What a righteous method. What an upright scheme. Good. Really good. Chu Yang laughed coldly and said word by word, I'll remember this. He shouted, Zhuge Changchang. Why aren't you sealing your cultivation and getting over here? Do you want me to do it myself? Zhuge Changchang finally let out a sigh of relief. He knew that his life was finally saved. At this moment, how could he still be angry and care about the other party's tone? He hastily sealed his cultivation and sat on the ground with a puff. He said, Brother Chu, I can help you save your third uncle. And L. Shahaj and G. Net. Chu Yang glanced at him in disdain. He really didn't want to say anything more to such a person. With a wave of his hand, Dong Wushang sealed this guy's cultivation again. He tied him up with a rope and threw him into the room with a thud. Zhuge let out a long cry of pain. Dong Wushang's technique was indeed much cruder than the average person's. Big brother? You have to save my father? Chulur wiped her tears. The more she thought about it, the sadder she felt. He has suffered so much for me. Chu Yang felt as if something was stuck in his throat. He said heavily, Don't worry. I will definitely save third uncle. The battle had ended and everyone felt more relaxed. Although Chu Feiyan's matter had covered everyone's hearts with a layer of dark clouds, they had finally overcome the biggest crisis. The rarest thing was that no one was injured, and this made them even more overjoyed. Meng Qiaoran stood at the door, stroking his beard and smiling. Mo Qingwu had already rushed out of the room, grumbling non-stop. If you knew that it would be so easy, why didn't you let me out? You even gave me a mission. Only now did she know that the mission didn't need anyone to carry it out. Mo Lei and Wu Qianshan both laughed at her words. Looking at the little girl's pouting mouth and rolling eyes, they were all overjoyed. At this moment someone called out lightly, "You are Chu Yang?" Chu Yang turned around abruptly. He only felt a huge pressure coming towards him. The wind fox, which had just jumped from Chu Yang's shoulder to Mo Qingwu's arms, felt all its fur stand on end. It looked ahead with some fear in its eyes. Dong Wushang's hand was on the hilt of his saber. Rui Badong also grasped the short sword in his arms. Behind everyone there was a man in black. His entire body was covered in black, only revealing two eyes. Shuhai Guanji, net. His eyes were old and sharp as he looked at everyone. He just stood there with his hands behind his back in the snow 100 feet away. But in everyone's senses, there was no such person at all. Everyone was shocked. This person was definitely an expert. And even if he wasn't on the level of the Moon Breeze couple, he definitely wasn't too far off. How could such a person suddenly appear now that the battle had just ended? Chu Yang's pupils shrank. Although this person had restrained his aura, Chu Yang could still feel this person's strength and hostility, as well as a kind of vague murderous aura. This person was an enemy. Chu Yang instantly made a judgment. He took a step forward and opened his arms slightly, protecting everyone behind him. Then he took another 2 steps forward and asked warily, "Who are you?" At the same time he summoned the sword spirit and quickly possessed him. This person was so strong that even if everyone present were to fight together, they would definitely not be his match. There was admiration in this person's eyes. He said, "Chu Yang, not bad indeed. No wonder you have the prestige and power you have today. As the leader, it's already not easy for you to be able to sense danger immediately. You being able to protect yourself in front of your brothers after sensing danger is even more admirable. A person like you indeed has the ability to make people loyal to you." Chu Yang frowned and said, "You haven't answered my question." With his hands behind his back, this person said indifferently, "Does it matter whether I answer or not?" Chu Yang took a deep breath and said, "It does indeed matter." This mysterious person's eyes revealed a smile like spring water, but it was the spring water that had experienced the vicissitudes of life. He said indifferently, "Don't worry, there's no need to be so nervous. Today I originally only wanted to see you, but after seeing you I decided to kill you. Because you're too outstanding. Keeping you alive is really too big of a threat." Chu Yang smiled faintly. "It's not as easy to kill me as you think." As he spoke, the sword spirit had already possessed him. The calamity sword appeared in his hand with a clang. Then Chu Yang turned into a long rainbow and flew up from the ground. He crossed hundreds of feet and shot over. This person was strong and invincible. This was the sword spirit's warning. But Chu Yang had no other choice. Because he knew that as long as he hesitated, his brothers would attack. And attacking would only be courting death. He couldn't retreat. If he retreated, his brothers would risk their lives to block this person and create time for him to escape. His brothers would still die. So, if Chu Yang wanted to leave, there was only one way left. Break through head-on and flee far away. Only Dong Wushang and the others were left. With this person's identity, if he said he wouldn't kill, he would definitely not kill. Besides, his main target was Chu Yang. If he chased after Chu Yang, Dong Wushang and Mo Qingwu and the others would be even safer. Of course, all of this was based on the fact that Chu Yang could successfully escape. The sword turned into a rainbow. The mysterious black-robed man's eyes were filled with admiration. His body floated up in the air. He slammed his palm on the calamity sword. Chu Yang's body, controlled by the sword spirit, shook violently and spat out a mouthful of blood. The black-robed man's eyes narrowed. "Supreme martial artist Cultivation? So you're a 7th grade sword saint. You're still hiding your strength." He slammed his palm on the sword again. Although he didn't use much time to speak compared to the speed of the sword spirit's sword, he still used a lot more time. But after he finished speaking, he slammed his palm again and was actually able to hit the fleeting sword again. In this situation, the extreme contradiction between fast and slow made everyone who saw it feel so uncomfortable that they wanted to vomit blood. Chu Yang's body shook again and he spat out another mouthful of blood. He turned around and was about to pass by him. But the black-robed man retreated lightly and blocked him again. He slammed his palm again. The sword spirit was shocked again. This person had already grasped the laws of space. Right at this moment, a furious roar was heard. A sharp black light turned into a thunderbolt. Dong Wuxiang raised his dark saber and rushed over madly. At this moment, Dong Wuxiang activated all of his life's potential without regard for anything and released the most powerful saber attack of his life so far. He didn't speak, but he used his heart, his soul, his spirit, his strength, his will, his everything. It all melted into this saber attack. Good saber. The black-robed man's eyes were filled with admiration again. At the same time, Rui Badong also rushed up like lightning and pounced on the black-robed man. Red light surrounded Mo Qingwu's red sleeves and light saber slashed fiercely. Before her, a white shadow shot out like lightning and went straight for the black-robed man. It was the Wind Fox. The sword light was clear and bright. Wu Qianqian and Mo Lei attacked from the left and right respectively. Obviously, Wu Qianqian was much faster than Mo Lei. A sword light followed behind. Meng Chaoran rushed over on his sword. Chu Le's petite body flew into the air. For the first time in her life, she took the initiative to attack the enemy. In an instant, 8 people and a spirit beast attacked at the same time. The black-robed man's eyes were filled with disdain and he punched out. It hit the blade of Dong Wuxiang's black saber. With a snap, the black saber broke from the middle. Dong Wuxiang's sternum caved in and he spat out blood and flew backward. At the same time, his left fist hit the Wind Fox. The Wind Fox screamed and fell from the sky. With a light flick of his fingers, a few sharp gusts of wind were released. Mo Lei groaned and a few bloody holes appeared on her shoulders and legs. She fell from the sky. With a kick, Mo Qingwu and her saber were kicked more than 100 feet away. All of this happened at the same time. Rui Badong pounced from behind. The black-robed man sneered and kicked. It hit Rui Budong's lower abdomen. Rui Badong cried out and his internal organs shattered. He spat out a mouthful of blood, but he hugged the black-robed man's left leg with all his might. The black-robed man's leg shook slightly and was about to throw him out. But at this moment, Rui Badong suddenly lowered his head and his sharp teeth bit into his calf fiercely. Fourth watch. Begging for votes. Chapter 2029. Chu Yang spat out a mouthful of blood. Then he spat out 3 more mouthfuls of boiling red blood. The world spun around him. He vaguely saw a black-clothed figure in front of him. Her clothes were as black as ink, slender and elegant. Her features were picturesque and peerless. It was Wu Qianqian. Wu Qianqian stood in front of him just like that, looking at him with resentment and reluctance. It was as if she wanted to reach out and touch his face but couldn't. It was as if she wanted to throw herself into his arms but was getting further and further away. Chiang, I'm leaving. You must be happy. Vaguely, Wu Qianqian seemed to be calling out to him. She seemed to be wholeheartedly blessing him with her soul power. Chu Yang spat out another mouthful of blood. For a moment, his heart ached as if he was dying. His heart was bleak. In the tribulation space, the sword spirit shouted angrily, "Heaven-nourishing jade! Heaven-nourishing jade!" Chu Yang was perplexed. At? The sword spirit shouted angrily, "Use the heaven-nourishing jade quickly. If you don't use it now, when her body is no longer soft, she will really die." Heaven-nourishing jade? Chu Yang suddenly realized. His mind had been too agitated that he had forgotten about the heaven-nourishing jade. He tried hard to clear his mind but was still a little dazed. In a moment of desperation, he grabbed the broken sword on the ground and stabbed it into his thigh. The bone-piercing pain jolted him awake. How do I use the heaven-nourishing jade? Put it in her mouth first to protect her life and soul, the sword spirit said anxiously. Chu Yang hurriedly reached into the tribulation space and realized that his arm was still broken. He couldn't care less. He corrected his bones and took out the heaven-nourishing jade. He took out the largest piece and sent it toward Wu Qianqian's mouth. But Wu Qianqian's lips were tightly shut and she couldn't swallow it. He watched as the heaven-nourishing jade shone and slowly melted beside her lips. Chu Yang's heart was burning with anxiety. He suddenly lowered his head and held the heaven-nourishing jade in his mouth. He brought it close to Wu Qianqian's lips and blew the pure life force from the heaven-nourishing jade into Wu Qianqian's mouth through the tiny gap between her teeth. Then he was afraid that after this, he would share the spiritual energy of the heaven-nourishing jade. Wu Qianqian couldn't recover, so he took another piece and fed it to her. When he was about to take the third piece, the sword spirit hurriedly said with heartache, "Enough, enough. There's no need for so much. She'll explode." Only then did Chu Yang stop. Then he hurriedly healed his broken hand and activated the Heavenly God technique. At the same time, he quickly took out the incomplete version of the heavy pill and handed it to Meng Chaoran so that he could give one to everyone who was injured. Then Chuyang began to wait. He waited for Wu Qianqian to wake up. The battle just now seemed to have lasted for a long time, but in truth, everything happened in the blink of an eye. It was just the beginning. It was already over. There's only one enemy. But everyone on our side is seriously injured except for Meng Chaoran, who's further away. The danger of this battle was far greater than any of the great battles that Chuyang had experienced since his debut. This was also Chuyang. This was his first time facing a supreme martial artist. Furthermore, it was his first time facing an intermediate supreme martial artist. The difference in strength was like heaven and earth. They couldn't be mentioned in the same breath. Mo Lei-er's injuries were considered light, but Dong Wuxiang's injuries were very serious. Although he wouldn't lose his life, if he didn't have the incomplete version of the heavy pill, Dong Wuxiang would probably never be able to recover after today. Mo Qingwu fought with her life on the line twice and was still unconscious now. Chu Lur was patted by the black-robed man from afar and couldn't stand up at all. The wind fox limped onto Mo Qingwu's body, moaning softly. Its big black eyes were full of pain. With a thud, Rui Badong, who had been kicked into the air, finally fell back down. He fell onto the ground like a pile of mud. Chuyang and Dong Wuxiang were naturally not worried about this guy. Rui Badong was the least worrisome one. An immortal body. Every time he died, his strength would increase instead. Instead, it was the injured people who were more troublesome. After waiting for a while, Wu Qianqian still hadn't woken up. Although her body remained soft, there were no signs of life. Chuyang became anxious and asked the sword spirit, "When will she wake up? How long will this heaven-nourishing jade take effect? Damn it, what are you bragging about? I thought it was even more miraculous than the heavy pill, but it's not even as good as the heavy pill." The sword spirit rolled his eyes and said, "Even if you are worried about Wu Qianqian, you don't have to belittle the heaven-nourishing jade like this. The heaven-nourishing jade has already taken effect. Wu Qianqian's primordial spirit can be considered to have been preserved and won't die for now. But how can it be easy for her to recover to her original state? How can it be done with just this heaven-nourishing jade? Do you still need something else?" Chuyang asked. "What do you need?" "The heaven-nourishing jade is already a heaven-defying item. As long as a person is dead and the body hasn't stiffened, the heaven-nourishing jade can preserve the spirit. Even if the person has been dead for 2 hours, the heaven-nourishing jade can still gather the spirit and capture it. In other words, although Wu Qianqian isn't breathing now and has no heartbeat, her spirit is still in her body. Even if you can't find a way to save her, her body won't rot even after thousands of years. As long as the conditions are coincidentally met, she can still wake up," the sword spirit said. "You just need to say what you need to wake her up. That will do." Chuyang looked at Wu Qianqian's pale face with heartache. He said impatiently, "Why are you so naggy about the rest? You need the resurrection grass." The sword spirit hurriedly said a name. "Resurrection grass?" Chuyang's eyes lit up. "Where can I find this?" The sword spirit heaved a long sigh. "The Heaven Imperial Court." Chuyang was stunned. After a long while, he scolded like a volcano erupting. "Fuck. Isn't this fucking making things difficult for me? With my current cultivation level, when will I be able to go up to the Heavenly Imperial Court? When you can go up, that's your problem. But you have to go up eventually." The sword spirit said indifferently, "What I need to remind you is that if you can find the resurrection grass and use it together with the heaven-nourishing jade, then once Wu Qianqian comes back to life, she will be immortal." The sword spirit blinked and looked at Chuyang. "Did you see Rui Butong's phoenix body? Birth, old age, sickness and death are the cycles of heaven. The heaven-nourishing jade can reverse life and death. Therefore, the peak power of the heaven-nourishing jade is a heaven-defying power. Why is there a heaven-defying power? It's the power of Tao. Only the power of the great Tao can be heaven-defying. And the resurrection grass, as the name suggests, can bring one's soul back to life. Together with the heaven-defying power, it is the cycle of reincarnation. It must not harm the body." Chuyang calmed down. After thinking carefully, he said with a cold smile, "Based on what you said, Qianqian's current state is a blessing. Instead, it's her fate?" The sword spirit did not deny it. "Not everyone can obtain the heaven-defying power of the heaven-nourishing jade. And the heaven-defying power of the heaven-nourishing jade is refined by the heaven-defying Calamity Sword Master. Since the beginning of time, only you and only you will be able to do it." The sword spirit said, "Now that things have come to this, I might as well make it clear. You didn't die in the tribulation of life and death. You were destroyed in accordance with heaven and reborn in defiance of heaven. After you, there will be no more Calamity Sword or Calamity Sword Master in this world. Therefore your heaven-nourishing jade is one of a kind in the world. Wu Qianqian deserved to die, but she was kept by the heaven-nourishing jade. She only needs the resurrection grass to revive. After she revives, she cannot die in this tribulation of life and death. The sword spirit said lightly, and, actually from this moment onwards, then you will have truly walked into your own destiny. My own destiny? Chu Yang asked, perplexed. That's right, your own destiny. The sword spirit said solemnly, before this you didn't know that there's always someone better than you. But Zi Sheqing appeared so you know. You and Zi Sheqing have feelings for each other. You have an agreement at the heavenly imperial court. But your determination is not firm. You just want to laugh proudly at the heavens with your brothers. That is already your life's work. Therefore it's not impossible for you to give up. It's even possible that your conviction is not firm enough and you can't fulfill your promise with Zi Sheqing. But at this moment I'm telling you that if you give up, it's equivalent to giving up on your brothers. Therefore you can only move forward. But at this moment you only know how to protect, but you still don't know the direction you're fighting for. But at this moment, Wu Qianqian's death has shown you the right direction, which is the heavenly imperial court. Only in the heavenly imperial court will there be resurrection grass. The sword spirit said, when you reach the heavenly imperial court, you will naturally know all the answers to these mysteries. That's the real mission of the tribulation sword master. The sword spirit said word by word, Yin and Yang must cherish the beauty, is not just a poem. Resurrection after death is going against the heavens. The heavens are the darkness, the earth is the darkness. This is Yin and Yang. Cherishing each other in life and death is Yin and Yang cherishing the beauty. Without experiencing life and death, do you know how to cherish her? Chu Yang was silent. You only knew how to cherish Mo Qinggu when you lost her in your previous life. You only knew how to cherish Wu Qianqian after you lost her in this life. But why do you only know how to cherish something after you lose it? You also cherish your brothers now, but I dare to bet that if one of them dies now, you will cherish the others even more in the future. This is actually not good. Only regretting it when you lose it proves that you didn't do enough when you had it. The sword spirit said word by word. He stared intently at Chu Yang. Isn't it good to cherish it when you have it? Chu Yang's countenance changed and he suddenly looked up. Only knowing how to cherish it when you lose it is the weak, the common people. Cherishing it when you have it is the wise man, the strong. The sword spirit smiled slightly. Here it's not only referring to women but also brothers, sisters, parents, relatives, cultivation or mission. Or enemies. Also, personal integrity, perseverance. Cherish everything that can be cherished, and you will be able to obtain everything that can be obtained. They had to admit that what Mo Laer said made sense. Make the best use of your time to recuperate in these few days. Yu Lingxue said, when your injuries have fully recovered, I will bring you all out of Tianji City. He rolled his eyes and said faintly, as long as the news of us being heavily injured doesn't spread out, as long as they know that we are here, no one in the entire heavenly layer would dare to cause trouble. Everyone smiled and nodded. Yu Lingxue really wasn't boasting. The Dharma Supreme was beaten until his whereabouts were unknown. Wu Jueqing was here, half dead. Bu Luqing had left. Ning Qinya was seriously injured and had gone into hiding. The 8 second grandmasters had died an unnatural death. In the entire heavens, Moon Breeze was truly invincible, of course, under the circumstances where they didn't know that they were already heavily injured. At this moment, a furious voice came from outside. Fuck. All of you are still alive but you didn't care about me. I was already beaten to a pulp and you still threw me into the snow. It's fine if you threw me into the snow, but you actually threw me beside the toilet. Who did it? Oh, Dong Wushang, was it you? Come out, I'll teach you a lesson. It was Rui Budong's voice. Master Rui was incredible now. He died 3 times in a day. The first time he died, he came back alive and his cultivation jumped from 5th grade martial saint to 7th grade martial saint. The second time he died, he came back alive and his cultivation actually became 2nd grade. And now, the third time he died and became a pulp, he came back alive and kicking. He was actually a 1st grade supreme martial artist. This kind of leveling up method was really unprecedented. The door curtain was lifted and Master Rui walked in casually. When he saw the Moon Breeze couple, he instantly shrank and rubbed his hands. Ah, the two of you are here too. Hee hee, Yu Lingxue rolled his eyes. I heard that you are blaming us for not caring about you? Very unhappy? Rui Badong said obsequiously, No, no. Did I say that? We share life and death, fortune and misfortune in the same boat in life and death. Why would I say something like that? Wouldn't it hurt everyone's feelings if I said it? A person who says something like that is practically a bird's egg. Chu Yang, Dong Wushang and Emole couldn't help but laugh. This guy really dared to say that. But, from a certain point of view, this guy was really just a bird's egg. Yu Lingxue snorted and said, Since you know that you are a bird's egg, why don't you sit obediently at the side? Rui Badong repeatedly agreed and sat down obediently. Everyone was full of admiration. Yu Lingxue was like an experiment using Rui Badong as an experiment. Even though he was a little tired now and his injuries couldn't be concealed, he was able to suppress Rui Badong with just his accumulated power. And this was someone he knew. If he wasn't, what would happen? After Rui Badong sat down, it was as if a scorpion was stuffed in his butt. He twisted and turned, unable to contain the excitement in his heart. He couldn't help but be excited. All along he had been the weakest among the brothers and also the youngest. But now he had a complete turnaround. He was the first to reach the supreme martial artist level. Among the others, Chu Yang and Dong Wushang, who were the highest, were still hovering around the 7th grade. How could Rui Badong not be complacent? At this moment he couldn't wait to call Gu Duxing up and scold him to his face, and then really beat that guy up, call Jiamo and Luo Kadi up and give them a good beating to vent the depression of being bullied for a long time. Of course he even wanted to beat up Dong Wushang and then look for Chu Yang to challenge his position as the boss. But before he could do it he was suppressed by Yu Lingxue. He was a little unhappy. After twisting for a while he winked and said, Boss, I broke through again, hee hee. Chu Yang said indifferently, Oh. Rui Badong was startled. Since he did not get the surprised reaction he expected, he did not give up and continued to show off. Boss, do you know what level I've reached? Hee hee, 1st grade supreme martial artist. Chu Yang said indifferently, Oh, continue to work hard. Rui Badong was depressed. What kind of reaction was this? When I broke through in the past, everyone was very surprised and very happy. Why was the reaction so dull this time? His face turned ashen. Unwilling to give up, he said to Dong Wushang, 4th brother, I've broken through to the supreme martial artist level. Dong Wushang suppressed his laughter and scolded, What's so great about breaking through? What's there to show off about being a 1st grade supreme martial artist? Just look at how immature you are. How can you achieve great things with this kind of mentality? Isn't it just a small breakthrough? Bastard, you're simply a villain intoxicated by success. Your ugly face is disgusting. Get out and get wet in the snow. Rui Badong was flabbergasted, his lips trembling. You. He turned to Chu Yang for help. Boss, look, Chu Yang shouted angrily, Get out. Rui Badong was like a frosted cigar at once. He hung his head dejectedly, only feeling that the joy of breaking through several levels just now was gone. He walked out dejectedly, muttering in confusion, What's going on? Something's not right. He had just walked out of the door when he heard deafening laughter in the room. Like a whirlwind, Rui Badong rushed in again. He said angrily, Great, you're messing with me. Everyone was even more overjoyed. Everyone had long seen Rui Badong's smug look. His breakthrough was indeed amazing. However, they all deliberately kept a straight face and didn't reveal anything. Chu Yang and Dong Wushang were even more stern as they threw this little guy out with a big hot fart. Only now did they laugh. In the room, the atmosphere after the big battle was relaxed. On the bed, Wu Jueqing, who was unconscious with his eyes closed, suddenly let out a faint sigh. Looking at Chu Yang and his brothers laughing and joking, Wu Jueqing couldn't help but think of his brothers back then. For a moment he couldn't help but think of the past, his soul wandering to the heavens. Brothers, where are you? Wu Jueqing lay quietly listening to the other brothers laughing and joking. He only felt more and more lonely, a wave of depression and anger rising in his heart. I will avenge all of you. Definitely. Dharma Supreme, you despicable villain, we were both once tribulations and had the same experience. How dare you plot against me too? I won't let you off. Regarding this, Wu Jueqing still couldn't understand even now. The Dharma Supreme had the same goal as him. Keeping him alive was much more helpful than killing him. Why did he plot against him? What good would it do the Dharma Supreme if he died completely in that great array? Other than losing a powerful helper, there really wasn't any benefit at all. As for why he was afraid that he would compete with him, but it had been so many years. If he wanted to compete, the Dharma Supreme wouldn't be able to win against him no matter what. They hadn't competed for so many years, what was he worried about? Wu Jueqing was extremely puzzled. With a moan, Mo Qingwu woke up. She called out, Chuyang, Chuyang. The moment she opened her eyes and saw everyone, she was overjoyed. You're all right? That's great. When the little girl heard what happened just now, she couldn't help but burst into tears. She stayed by Wu Qianqian's side, refusing to leave no matter what. I want to take care of Sister Qianqian and thank her personally. As long as she doesn't wake up, I'll take care of her. Mo Qingwu wiped her tears and said, she saved my big brother Chuyang. I'm so grateful to her. Sister Qianqian, quickly wake up. When you wake up, I'll give you half of Chuyang. This sentence made Feng Yuro and Yu Lingxua laugh. Half of a person could be given away? I have a lot of things to say to all of you. Wait for me to finish updating and post a single chapter. Begging for votes. To be continued. Chapter 2031. In the next few days, everyone was recuperating. Chuyang also tried his best to treat everyone's injuries. Everyone's injuries were very serious. Especially the Moon Breeze couple. Their injuries were even more serious. Chuyang tried his best but could only alleviate their injuries slightly. He couldn't help them recover. Dong Wushang, Mo Lei, and Mo Qingwu's injuries were considered more serious. For something like serious injuries, for example, being injured by a sovereign and being injured by a supreme martial artist were two completely different concepts. Although they were of the same strength, the injuries of a supreme martial artist would naturally carry the divine consciousness of a supreme martial artist. That was a more subtle form of destruction. Especially for the spirit and meridians, the damage was even more serious and not easy to recover. And this time, it was a low-grade supreme martial artist who did it. The damage was even greater. Therefore, the recovery of everyone's injuries this time was especially slow. The one with the most serious injuries was, of course, Wu Jueqing. Wu Jueqing's injuries had already reached the point where even the sword spirit was somewhat helpless. Chuyang had once thought of using the heaven-nourishing jade but was stopped by the sword spirit. The heaven-nourishing jade could only be used to its fullest potential after a person died. Heaven-nourishing, as the name implied, the heaven that needed to be nourished must have already collapsed. If the heaven didn't collapse, why did it need to be nourished? And Wu Jueqing was obviously still breathing now. If he really waited until he was no longer breathing before using the heaven-nourishing jade, Wu Jueqing would also fall into a long deep sleep like Wu Qianqian. He would only wake up when he reached the resurrection grass. The only thing Chuyang could do now was to use medicine to temporarily stabilize Wu Jueqing's injuries. As for the rest, he could only rely on his own strength to slowly recover. Only then could he talk about other things. Because he definitely couldn't use heavy pills on Wu Jueqing. Once he did, it would be equivalent to exposing his identity immediately. There were really too many variables. Chuyang couldn't afford such variables at all now. In these few days, Tianji City was in a state of grief. After the Battle of Mount Xingyun, the people of the Zhuge clan waited for a long time and did not see anyone return. Thus they sent people to Mount Xingyun to check. What they saw scared the hell out of the few people who went to check it out. Mount Xingyun was full of corpses. People of the big clans all died here. When the news came back, the Zhuge clan was shocked. Quite a number of people were dispatched. Xiao Chen went to Mount Xingyun to retrieve the corpse. Then he quickly reported the news to the other great clans. The entire heavenly layer continent was filled with worry and misery. Every family in the great clans was in mourning, including the Li clan. Li Xiangxi of the Li clan led his men all the way back to the north and encountered countless interceptions along the way. In the end, only Li Xiangxi was able to successfully return to the Li clan. There were only 5 people left. The Li clan flew into a rage and swore to take revenge. Diwu clan. Diwu Qingrou's small courtyard. The people we sent were also wiped out? No survivors? Diwu Qingrou's expression revealed shock. This matter was no small matter. The Diwu clan did not have a strong foundation at the moment. They had been seconded 5 supreme martial artists at once. This drained half of the power of the Diwu family. How could Diwu Qingrou not be shocked by the fact that the entire army was at Mount Xingyun? Another heartache. Yes. The wrinkles on the old man's face seemed to have deepened. Amazing. Diwu Qingrou sighed. I didn't expect them to have such formidable strength. But Sir had clearly agreed. He wanted to help that Chuyang and also told him about the clothes of our men. They even killed all of our men. They are really ungrateful, the old man said angrily. Diwu Qingro was silent for a while and said, "There was actually no Wu on the clothes of those people." The old man was instantly dumbfounded. Their Wu character is inside their outer robes, but above their inner robes. Diwu Qingro's following words made the old man even more shocked. Then why, this. The old man was a little incoherent. Diwu Qingro's expression was complicated. You thought that I was really helping Chu Yang. In fact, what I really helped him with was those few pieces of information. And Chu Yang also understood, Diwu Qingro said lightly. Chu Yang thanked me for those few pieces of information but appeared very indifferent towards the most important one, Diwu Qingro said slowly. He also had hope but didn't fully believe it. May I know the reason why Sir did this? The old man asked. Diwu Qingro smiled bitterly. Because our Diwu clan can't afford to lose. In fact, in this battle we were actually trying to gain advantages from both sides. If the big clans win, then they don't need to expose their identities. If the big clans lose, they only need to tear their clothes and reveal the Wu, then they can save their lives. If they are evenly matched, then they can also tear their clothes and reveal the Wu, to guide them to escape. Then it will be helpful. For this battle I had 3 plans. No matter what, I had to protect the supreme martial artists of our clan. Diwu Qingro let out a long sigh. I didn't expect that after all my scheming, I still couldn't save them. The old man beside him was completely stunned. If so, wouldn't Chu Yang have been deceived for nothing? This was too sinister, wasn't it? Besides, after Chu Yang left, you told me that kind of argument. Wouldn't you have deceived me too? Diwu Qingro saw through his thoughts and said slowly, I didn't deceive you, but it was snowing heavily at that time. I was afraid that Chu Yang wouldn't go far and would come back to eavesdrop. Indeed, then it would really be bad. The old man suddenly felt relieved. Besides, on Chu Yang's side, you can't guess Chu Yang's thoughts. Even if he is skeptical, he will still make arrangements. Diwu Qingro chuckled. If not, he wouldn't be Chu Yang. It's just that I didn't expect things to be so bad. Diwu Qingro let out a long sigh. Let's take the bodies back to the clan and bury them grandly. In the future we can only take one step at a time. Fortunately, there is no clear falling out with Chu Yang's side. He sighed softly. Let's see what Chu Yang does in a few days' time. Diwu Qingro was right. As for the experts prepared by the Diwu clan, Chu Yang was a little skeptical at first. Later, when he was 70 to 80% convinced, he suddenly thought, on the surface I am weak. Diwu Qingro's move has greatly exposed the suspicion of the Diwu clan. It is so obvious that the other clans can't see it. Once they see it, my side will break out of the encirclement and be safe, but the Diwu clan will definitely be destroyed. Diwu Qingro wouldn't be so noble as to sacrifice himself for others, let alone his entire clan. Chu Yang definitely wouldn't believe it. Therefore, after he briefed Buluqing and Moon Breeze, when Zi Sheqing left, he didn't mention this at all. The key to success or failure of this matter was still Zi Sheqing. Zi Sheqing was the main force. Chu Yang was even thinking, if this isn't the case, then it must be Diwu Qingro's scheme. If Zi Sheqing killed those few supreme martial artists, it's not a bad thing. That night, after Chu Yang checked on everyone's injuries, he returned to the room. These few days are indeed very peaceful. Chu Yang immersed his consciousness into the tribulation space and accepted the cleansing of his soul by the primordial violet vapor. With Moon Breeze here, the Zhuge clan can only try their best to avoid conflict with us. They definitely won't take the initiative to look for trouble. The sword spirit laughed. You must be very anxious these few days? Chu Yang squinted. Indeed. I have to suppress my aura every day. I didn't restrain it at all. Otherwise, Wu Jueqing wouldn't have discovered it. But the sword intent in his body can definitely discover me. The sword spirit forced a smile and said, as soon as he discovered me, he immediately changed his mind. Once it discovers me, then the sword intent will become agitated. Once it becomes agitated, Wu Jueqing will know. If it becomes too agitated, Wu Jueqing might even die of agitation. This matter is a little too aggrieved. It's clearly something that belongs to me. Not only do I have to control my desire now, but it's still a long way to go to get it back. If Wu Jueqing really fully recovers one day, then it'll be even more troublesome. Chu Yang sighed. After thinking for a long time, he said, I do have an idea. What idea? The sword spirit's eyes lit up and he asked excitedly. He already couldn't wait to withdraw the sword intent. Can you make the sword intent agitated without exposing yourself? Chu Yang asked. This. The sword spirit said awkwardly, It's very difficult. Very difficult means it's possible. Chu Yang interrupted. Then there's a way. The sword spirit was dumbfounded. Very difficult means it's possible? What kind of argument is this? In the next few days Chu Yang began to treat Wu Jueqing gradually. But he was very careful. His injuries would get better one day but worsen the next day. Every time Chu Yang himself was very surprised. What's going on? Not only was Chu Yang surprised, Wu Jueqing was also surprised. Because when he tried to mobilize some energy and started to recover, he would find that it disappeared without a trace after a nap. What was going on? Wu Jueqing was a divine doctor himself. He naturally knew that Chu Yang was doing his best to treat him. Every step was very precise and some were even ingenious that he had never thought of. As an expert he had only gratitude towards Chu Yang. There was absolutely no doubt about it. Then the problem lay with his body? But what problem could there be with his body? Wu Jueqing tried his best to check his body, but he couldn't find anything. Another day later Wu Jueqing found that his condition had worsened. And now he finally found the source of the problem, the sword intent. The sword intent was rapidly absorbing his energy. Every time he mobilized a little, it would absorb a little. In his current state, there was no way he could resist its absorption at all. If he was in his perfect state he would be able to recover this bit of loss with a breath. He wouldn't take it to heart or notice it at all. But at a time like this, it was completely life-threatening. I'm still struggling at death's door. How am I going to recover if you absorb my energy to recover like this? At this moment, this Lord Wu's heart was completely cold. Fifth update. I'm writing chapter 1 right now. Requesting monthly votes. Give me some motivation to explode. Give me monthly votes. G. To be continued. Chapter 2032. After another 3 days, Wu Jueqing was at his wit's end. But the sword intent became active. It absorbed faster and faster and started to absorb Wu Jueqing's potential. Wu Jueqing was so weak now that he couldn't even move his little finger. He had no ability to stop it at all. Besides absorbing his potential, the sword intent also started to move restlessly in his dantian. It seemed to have sensed that the current strength of the person who trapped it was no longer enough to suppress it. Therefore the sword intent wanted to leave. That kind of feeling. The sword intent moved more and more vigorously. Finally it was discovered by Chu Yang. This day, after applying the medicine, Chu Yang sat on the small stool beside Wu Jueqing's bed and looked at him seriously. Lord Wu, I think there's something I have to make clear to you. Wu Jueqing's eyes moved with difficulty. I know what you want to say. Go ahead. These few days I was finally able to find out. It's not that Lord Wu didn't cooperate, nor was it that I used the wrong medicine. It's that there's still a huge hidden danger in the 5 great ginseng bodies. Chu Yang said seriously. Wu Jueqing completely agreed with Chu Yang's words. He encouraged Chu Yang with his gaze, asking him to continue. Moreover, this unknown force is devouring Lord Wu's spiritual energy. Only when it's satisfied can the remaining spiritual energy be used to heal Lord Wu's injuries. Chu Yang said seriously, but with Lord Wu's current condition, you can't satisfy the needs of this force at all. Therefore you can't help yourself at all. My medicine, after passing through your meridians and turning into spiritual energy, was also devoured by this force. In fact, in these few days, Lord Wu hasn't received any treatment at all. Your injuries are continuing to worsen. Yes. Wu Jueqing sighed deeply. So, I've been thinking for the past few days whether or not we should release this power first. Or perhaps we should give it up for the time being and let our bodies recover first. At that time we can start cultivating again or find some other method. I believe that since Lord Wu knows about this mysterious power, you should have a way. Chu Yang said with all his heart. That's right. Wu Jueqing agreed. If this force doesn't come out, my body won't be able to recover. How can I make this power come out? Chu Yang said, I really don't have any experience in this matter. Please enlighten me, Lord Wu. He added, Lord Wu, forgive me for saying this, but right now your life is the most important thing. No matter if it's revenge or anything else, without your life, there's nothing to talk about. Wu Jueqing heaved a long sigh. Release this power. Wu Jueqing really couldn't bear to do it. This was a sword aura, an indestructible weapon with the power to instantly kill a supreme being. It was the greatest trump card of the Calamity Sword Master. Without it, his strength would be greatly reduced. However, Chu Yang was right. If you lost your life, even if you had the complete Calamity Sword, you would still be a corpse if you lost your life, not to mention the sword intent. It was useless, Wu Jueqing said helplessly, but with my current strength, even if I want to expel it, I'm powerless. Currently this energy is very restless. It seems like it wants to break out of my body on its own. I can only wait for him to come out on his own. How should we preserve this power after we come out? Chu Yang asked in a considerate manner. There's no way to preserve it. Wu Jueqing sighed. After it comes out, it can only go wherever it wants to go. Chu Yang made a sound of surprise and said, what a pity, such a strong power. Wu Jueqing sighed deeply. Pity? If you knew what kind of power this was, you would feel that it was even more of a pity. After another 2 days, the injuries of Dong Wushang and the rest were basically healed. Mo Qingwu had also mostly recovered. Apart from Wu Jueqing and Wu Qianqian, everyone else had basically recovered. Of course, the Moon Breeze couple's injuries could only be said to have shown signs of improvement, but the distance to a full recovery, that was really as far as the distance between heaven and earth. The sword aura in Wu Jueqing's body became more and more restless, causing his injuries to worsen. His dantian was already faintly bulging and somewhat transparent. A silver snake-like thing was scurrying back and forth inside. Every day Wu Jueqing's life was indescribably miserable, living a life worse than death. Finally, on this day when Chu Yang came, Wu Jueqing suggested a solution. Use a saber and cut open my dantian. Get that thing out quickly. Enough. Master Wu had really had enough. No matter who it was, having to go through all the punishments in the 18 levels of hell every day, going back and forth more than a dozen times. It would be enough. Now, to Wu Jueqing, even if there was an entire tribulation sword in his dantian, he would give it up without hesitation. This was going to kill him. Alright. Chu Yang immediately went out and prepared all the medicine. After fiddling with it for a long while, he came back in. Master Wu, you have to bear with it, Chu Yang said slowly. At this time, the sword aura was becoming more and more restless. Wu Jueqing was already in so much pain that he wanted to die. He said angrily, hurry? His voice was already trembling. Chu Yang no longer hesitated. With a swoosh, he cut open Wu Jueqing's dantian. Then, a gust of silver-colored gas rushed out of Wu Jueqing's body like a wild horse that had broken free of its reins. It soared into the sky and with a clang, it pierced through a huge hole in the roof. Then, it turned into a streak of silver-colored lightning that was several miles long in the sky and disappeared without a trace. From the beginning to the end, it didn't stop and didn't turn back. There wasn't the slightest bit of reluctance. Wu Jueqing let out a long sigh. His eyes were full of reluctance. His body relaxed in an instant. However, the sword aura was gone after all. Chu Yang immediately got busy. He stopped the bleeding, then aligned the broken flesh, applied some medicine, cleaned the wound, and used his divine technique to help Wu Jueqing unblock the broken meridians. This time it took more than 2 hours. She had barely managed to complete the treatment of Wu Jueqing's new wounds. At the moment when Wu Jueqing took the medicine, Wu Jueqing instantly felt a sensation that he hadn't felt in a long time. A surge of energy slowly spread out from the medicine, entered his already completely dried up meridians, entered his dantian, and then worked hard to heal his injuries. His life was saved after all. Moreover, with Chu Yang, a divine doctor who wasn't inferior to him in the slightest here, although it would take a long time, his cultivation was also preserved. Wu Jueqing sighed in his heart. This was already very good. What more could he ask for? Outside the orchard palace in the sky, a black shadow floated quietly. It emitted strange and silent waves. When the silver sword light saw this black shadow, it suddenly let out an excited sword chime. Then, like a moth to a flame, it flew toward the black shadow. As it flew closer and closer, the silver light also became smaller and smaller. It circled around the black fog and rubbed against it, as if it was reuniting after a long time and entering the arms of its parents. In the end, it silently melted into the black fog. The black fog silently dispersed in the sky, disappearing without a trace. All of this happened without a sound or sound. After Chu Yang finished treating Wu Jueqing let out a tired and sad sigh. He closed his eyes and fell into a deep sleep. Chu Yang quietly withdrew from the room. When he returned to his room, the black shadow couldn't wait to enter the tribulation space. Chu Yang hurriedly immersed his consciousness in. He saw the sword spirit asking excitedly, "Did you succeed?" The sword spirit nodded excitedly. "Ah, the sword intent has returned. Luckily Wu Jueqing nourished it for so long. Now its sharpness has basically been restrained. After merging into the tribulation sword, whether it's the tip, the edge or the blade, its power will double." Chu Yang said excitedly, doesn't that mean that I can also kill supreme martial artists in an instant in the future? The sword spirit immediately rolled his eyes. Big brother, don't make such a joke. With your current strength, it's already very good that you can activate the primary form of the sword intent. Do you think that you can kill supreme martial artists in an instant in Wu Jueqing's hands? Chu Yang said angrily, Wu Jueqing is not the tribulation sword master. He can use it, but I, the real one, can't? The sword spirit said, that's not the case. If you want to unleash the true power of the sword intent, you can even split the heavens in half. But the prerequisite is that you need to have the cultivation to unleash the greatest power. Everyone knows that you can unify the heavens with the tribulation sword, but have you? Wu Jueqing is already a supreme martial artist, aren't you? Chu Yang said angrily, I'm just saying. I just said one sentence and you have 10 sentences waiting for me. You're just like a woman. The sword spirit was furious, but he kept silent. Chu Yang checked his dantian and saw that on the tribulation sword, a white light was swimming from the sword tip to the sword edge, then to the sword edge and then to the sword guard. It was having a lot of fun. However, the sword edge, sword tip, and sword guard seemed to be very dissatisfied with this white light. Occasionally the sword edge would flick it away and the sword edge would throw it away. The sword edge would directly cut it into several pieces, and the sword guard would silently resist it. Chu Yang was very curious. This oblique sword intent didn't seem to be very popular? They blame it for having another aura on it and are very dissatisfied, the sword spirit explained. It's like a husband who caught his wife cheating on him and wants to wash it. What they're doing now is to wash away Wu Jueqing's aura. A husband who caught his wife cheating on him and wants to wash it? Chu Yang was sweating profusely. He couldn't take this kind of fierceness anymore. He stopped talking to this guy and focused on the sword intent. As it collided and swam continuously, the white light on its body also gradually became clear. Slowly, it changed from a kind of flickering brilliance to a constant and gentle white light. Then it attached itself to the sword tip. The sword tip trembled and didn't reject it anymore. Then the sword edge, and sword guard also didn't reject it. Then the entire tribulation sword emitted a blurry light. A kind of gentle light slowly merged into the tribulation sword and disappeared. A feeling arose in Chu Yang's heart. If the tribulation sword was a human body, then the sword intent was the meridians. Now the meridians were back in place. He could clearly feel that the power of the tribulation sword had increased by at least a few times. Chapter 2033. The elder in black looked at him coldly and said indifferently, I am the gold medal law enforcement officer of the Law Enforcement Interrogation Hall, Tian Yud. Gold medal law enforcement officer. The white-robed elder exclaimed exaggeratedly, wow, so awesome. Looking at your posture and tone, I thought the Dharma Supreme was here, speaking in such a 60s tone. Then he rolled his eyes and shouted, Tian Yud, do you know who I am? Tian Yud said angrily, I don't care who you are. Let go of him first. He had always been in charge of the interrogation hall and was always the one who made others angry. When had anyone ever bullied him? Now he couldn't hold it in anymore. The white-robed elder's face turned serious and he said coldly, I am Ning Haijiao. He took 2 steps forward and said indifferently, have you heard of me before? Ning Haijiao. Never heard of you. Tian Yud snorted and said disdainfully. The white-robed elder, Ning Haijiao, had a desolate look in his eyes. With his hands behind his back, he sighed. In this world, the people of the martial world are so forgetful. They even forgot about me. It's really terrifying. Nameless person, you are courting death. Tian Yud's face was already black and he was about to attack. Ning Haijiao said with emotion, back then we were born from the same mother and roamed the martial world side by side. The world's edge saber and world's edge sword shocked the world. How glorious that was. But because of a moment of carelessness, we were plotted against and retreated from the martial world. Only a few years have passed and no one knows about me anymore. The sorrow of life is really lamentable. Tian Yud strode over and said with a sinister smile, the ends of the world? I will send you to the ends of the world right now. Wait. Behind him, another black-robed elder shouted to stop him. Tian Yud said discontentedly, Sun Jin, what's wrong with you? Why are you shouting at me? Sun Jin ignored him and looked at the white-robed elder with uncertainty. Your surname is Ning? The white-robed elder rolled his eyes and said, if my surname is not Ning, then should I follow your surname? These words were really impolite to the extreme. Sun Jin, however, broke out in a cold sweat. May I ask, what is your relationship with Ning Tianya, supreme martial artist Ning? As soon as the three words Ning Tianya came out, Tianyud felt as if he was struck by lightning, and he was flabbergasted. He took 3 steps back. He looked at the white-robed old man in front of him in disbelief. Sai, I didn't want to use my big brother's name to scare people. The white-robed old man Ning Haijiao sighed. Since you have recognized me, I might as well say it clearly. I'm Ning Haijiao, Ning Tianya's younger brother. Everyone was shocked and vomited at the same time. Aren't you fucking using your big brother's name to scare people? Look at how you're composing poems the moment you open your mouth, and how you're talking about the ends of the earth when you close your mouth. You're simply afraid that the world doesn't know about it? I really don't know how you're going to use your big brother's name to scare people. How preposterous. Sir, you say that you are Supremacy Ning's younger brother. Do you have any proof? Sun Jin's voice was filled with respect. Ning Haijiao raised his hand and threw out a jade pendant. He said, proof. I didn't want to show it to you at first. However, I've retreated from the martial world for a long time and haven't meddled in the affairs of the world. In order to prevent others from saying that I'm a swindler, I have no choice but to lower my status. Sun Jun caught the jade pendant and saw that there was a Ning character in the middle of the jade pendant. At this time, the experts in the hall had already walked out one by one. They surrounded the hall and watched this scene in whispers. Ning Tianya's younger brother? With such a high status, he had actually come to Yi province. To this law enforcement branch. A person's name. A tree's shadow. Who dared to slight him? Everyone was very curious. Looking at this ordinary jade pendant in his palm, Sun Jin was somewhat baffled. Damn it, this jade pendant is made of inferior white crystal. Only a Ning character engraved on it can prove that you're Ning Tianya's younger brother? If that's the case, I can casually make 8 to 10,000 pieces of it. Why? Ning Haijiao rolled his eyes. Can't see the mystery? To think that you're supreme martial artist. You're practically 2 pig heads. If you don't use your internal energy to activate the jade pendant, how can you show the pressure of a supreme martial artist? Do you actually need me to teach you this kind of logic? Sai, how did this world become like this? Don't you know how to respect your elders? All of you are still pretending to be human. But all of you are idiots and your brains are full of shit. Sun Jin was infuriated by his scolding. He was almost about to fly into a rage, but in the end he suppressed it. The white crystal contained a supreme martial artist's divine consciousness. With the simple material of the white crystal, it could actually contain a supreme martial artist's divine consciousness. This in itself was an inconceivable thing. Only those powerful people could store a supreme martial artist's divine consciousness in a piece of white crystal. An ordinary supreme martial artist would probably explode the moment he inserted it. Therefore, when they heard that there was supreme martial artist Ning's divine consciousness in it, everyone was somewhat convinced. All of you take a look. Come closer and see the secret behind it. I'm not bluffing you. Ning Haijiao hugged his arms and looked up at the sky, shouting without looking away. Indeed, everyone wanted to see how this white crystal contained the supreme martial artist's divine sense, because this represented a supreme level of control. This was a genuine high-level supreme martial artist technique. Once they were touched and comprehended a little, they would benefit immensely. Therefore, no one was in the mood to care about this old fellow's bossy attitude, and they all gathered over. Even Nyo Dafa, who had been slapped violently just now, also didn't care about his old face and went over to watch with his eyes wide open. As for the slap just now, Hall Chief Nyo had already forgotten about it. In fact, he even felt honored. In this world, who had ever been slapped by Ning Tianya's younger brother? No one, right? Old people did. Although it was a slap, but what a great honor this was. To think that I, Nyo Dafa, would one day be related to supreme martial artist Ning's Ning clan. I, Nyo Dafa, am really awesome. Under everyone's watchful eyes, Sun Jin carefully placed the jade pendant in his palm and then activated his elemental energy. This jade pendant slowly emitted a sparkling and translucent white light, forming a halo of light. Everyone gasped in admiration. It was indeed a supreme martial artist's technique. At this level, the supreme martial artist's divine consciousness was actually still not activated. Everyone became even more curious as they stared and opened their mouths wide. Even if they were forced to kneel on the ground by the supreme martial artist's divine consciousness that suddenly appeared, that would also be a rare experience. Sun Jin's expression also became even more solemn as he slowly increased the output of his elemental energy. The next moment, bang! Without any warning, not only did the supreme martial artist's divine consciousness not appear on this ordinary white crystal jade pendant, it suddenly exploded violently. Everyone exclaimed in unison and was instantly dumbstruck. Pooh! A colorless and odorless gas was suddenly emitted from the white crystal land. Everyone exclaimed and naturally had to open their mouths. They had already held their breaths for a long time just now. When they opened their mouths, they naturally had to breathe. This breath. Almost everyone had a share. Most of this colorless and odorless gas was not wasted. Everyone inhaled a mouthful of it firmly. This colorless and odorless gas was really incredible. This was an innate poison that Miss Chu Lur had spent a lot of effort to come up with and give to her brother for self-defense. The amount of poison was huge and the toxicity was fierce. Even if it was someone like Ning Tianya, if he suddenly inhaled it, he would only feel dizzy. Other than immediately running away and finding a place to expel the poison, he would definitely not have any other thoughts. Not to mention these people now. What is this? Sun Jin was caught off guard and inhaled the most. There were already some double images in his eyes, and he felt so dizzy that the world was spinning. He scolded with difficulty, "You? What the hell are you doing?" But he only heard that Ning Haijiao laughing and saying, that's true. Fuck, this medicine is really useful." Then there were a few thuds. Lord Ning Haijiao kicked each of these experts who had already been poisoned and were swaying. He scolded, "How dare you doubt my identity? I'm an extraterrestrial demon? What's wrong with pretending to be Ning Tianya's younger brother?" Sun Zhen and Tian Yud hadn't fainted yet. When they heard that, they only complained, "This time we've really been cheated. It's actually the extraterrestrial demon Chu Yang and the rest." They hated themselves immensely. How could they be so careless? At the entrance, two figures flew in. With a palm each, two guards who hadn't recovered from their shock were sent flying and fell to the ground unconscious. Then Sun Jin heard one of them ask, "But Ong, it's done?" "That's..." This Ning Haijiao's voice was very smug. "Once I make a move, how can it not be done? I'm Ning Tianya's younger brother. As the saying goes, those who are good at fighting don't have outstanding achievements. Once they make a move, everything will be settled imperceptibly. Don't talk nonsense." Another steady and heavy voice said, "Which one is more important than your identity? Quickly knock them out and take them away." Sun Jin and Tian Yud's consciousness stopped at this point. They had completely fainted. Before they fainted, they were still thinking, "It's over. What kind of poison is this? How can it be so overbearing? Could it be the extraterrestrial demon's unique poison?" The three of them picked up Tian Yud, Sun Jin and Yo Dafa as if they were flying and left in a flash. The last person walking was Burly. When he reached the entrance, he stopped and pulled out a big saber. With a fierce sweep of the saber, he immediately returned the saber to its sheath and left as fast as he could. The saber light was like a waterfall. Once the saber was out, it immediately split into 7 or 8 saber auras. Like a gust of wind, it cut everyone in the courtyard who had already been poisoned into 2. Blood was dripping. With a flash, the 3 of them disappeared without a trace. By the time the experts from the law enforcement hall in the backyard rushed over, the scene had already completely ended. There were only corpses strewn all over the courtyard. Not a single living person could be seen. Everyone couldn't help but look at each other. What kind of powerful enemy could actually kill so many experts in one fell swoop? At the inn where Chu Yang and the other 2 were staying, Chu Yang pulled off the cloth covering his head and said lightly, "Start the interrogation immediately. No matter what means you use, you must pry open the mouths of these 3 people for me." Those who couldn't make head or tail of the previous chapter can now understand. I'll continue to work hard. G. Chapter 2034. Chu Yang clearly felt that the material of the stone started to become finer. Moreover, there was a sense of flexibility. The cross-section was also as fine as mud that had rotted for hundreds of years. Moreover, the wind blowing from such a stone was actually getting stronger and stronger. The sound of thunder was faintly heard, and it was extremely dull. One sound after another, as if it was a dull and real blow to the heart. Even the sword spirit was aghast at the sight of such power. Because, in the past, the previous masters of the tribulation sword had never experienced such a situation. But the sword spirit was already used to it. Ever since he followed this sword master, which thing had ever happened before? From the first fragment of the tribulation sword to now, every step this sword master took brought him a new feeling and a new experience. Chu Yang was still working hard. The stone pillar had already begun to sway greatly. It suddenly tilted towards one side. Then it swayed back and fell towards the other side again. It seemed to want to throw the person standing on its head down at all costs. But no matter how it fell, Chu Yang stood on it as if it had grown roots. The sword light in his hand flickered, undulating continuously. After another 500 feet, the material of the stone became finer and finer. In the end, it was as if it had completely become one. Not even the slightest trace of sand or other forms of fusion could be found. The wind blew faster and the thunder became deeper. Chu Yang turned a deaf ear to it. He allowed his black clothes to flutter in the wind. He just buried his head and worked hard. Finally, the tribulation sword let out a cheerful sword cry. A cold light emitted from its body, and then it turned warm. A sense of calmness suddenly rose from Chu Yang's heart. He kicked away the big stone under his feet, and saw a sparkling light suddenly appear. It was very short and thin. Compared to the sword body, it was one size smaller. But it was sparkling. It had a calm and ancient aura. It came straight towards him. When the other fragments of the tribulation sword were discovered, they were very excited. They seemed to want to jump up and celebrate. But this sword tongue clearly saw its old brother that it had not seen for 10,000 years. It was actually lying there motionless. The light on its body flashed, showing its excitement. However, it did not move at all. It was very reserved, or rather, very steady. Seeing this ancient sword tongue, Chu Yang suddenly thought of Dong Wuxiang's temperament for some inexplicable reason. That kind of calm and heroic aura also reminded him of Mo Tianji's temperament. That kind of strategizing Ao Shiyun's manner, that kind of silent savagery, calamity sword tongue. He finally appeared. The tongue of the sword was the part of the sword that was wrapped by the hilt. It pierced through the hilt and was not exposed to the outside. It could not be used to attack, but it was the foundation of the sword. The sword. If there was no sword tongue, it would break soon. If the sword's tongue, hilt, and body were all one, it would be hard and straight but not flexible enough. Therefore, there was no doubt that the sword tongue was the foundation of the sword. Chu Yang suppressed the excitement in his heart. He bent down and gently picked up the sword sheath with one hand. He vaguely felt as if a thought was greeting him. Greetings, sword master. But when Chu Yang listened carefully, he realized that this was just his own misconception. The tribulation sword in his hand automatically disintegrated. The sword tip, sword edge, sword blade, and sword guard flew in circles around the sword tongue. The sword tongue floated silently in the air, the light on its body brightening. The sword intent immediately wrapped around the sword tongue. Then the sword tip, sword blade, sword edge, and sword guard seemed to have received an order. They all pounced over. The sword tongue flashed and floated up quietly. It stood still in the air and issued a summon. The sword guard whooshed over. It leaned over. With a clang, the sword guard and the sword tongue merged into one. Then the sword edge, and sword tip all went back to their original positions. A tribulation sword suddenly took shape. Half of the tribulation sword's shadow in Chu Yang's dantian had already materialized. The 5 fragments of the tribulation sword floated in front of Chu Yang. Chu Yang gently stretched out his hand and held the sword tongue. He immediately felt a sense of connection. Suddenly, he felt as if the tribulation sword had become a part of his body and could no longer be separated. It was as if they were in perfect harmony. Both sides were adapting. Chu Yang tried to circulate the heaven-splitting divine technique and injected it into the tribulation sword. He clearly felt the sword tongue tremble. Then the tribulation sword let out an extremely joyful sword cry. For sentences suddenly appeared in Chu Yang's heart. The hidden light of the hidden edge is not over at night. Strategizing for days and months. I would rather hide for my entire life. But I am a murderous maniac. Then a figure inexplicably appeared in Chu Yang's mind. It was holding a long sword and dancing slowly. It was the 5th fragment of the tribulation sword, the 4 sword techniques belonging to the sword tongue. Chu Yang focused on memorizing. At this moment he was completely focused. The sword spirit was also watching Chu Yang attentively, paying attention to Chu Yang's mental state. Slowly, Chu Yang also gradually understood the purpose and functions of these 4 techniques. He couldn't help but praise them in his heart. The sword tongue had always been known as the foundation of the sword. It was indeed not without reason. To Chu Yang's understanding, the sword tongue was like a big hand hidden in the dark. It never appeared. But this hand held the world's top killing power, the sharpest sword. Compared to the killing sword, the scariest part should be this hand. The first technique, the hidden edge, is not over at night. As the name suggested, it was to hide in the dark and wait for an opportunity to strike. This was a hidden technique. But every part of it was full of killing intent. It could attack from any direction at any time. There was absolutely no blind spot in the attack. The second technique, the long planning of the day and the moon, was similar to the first technique. But it had an additional grasp of the battle situation. This technique had clearly expanded the alert range by 10 times. Not only his own enemies but even his comrades, brothers and possible enemies were all faintly shrouded by this move. The third move was to hide one's entire life. It was like the darkness before the dawn. After all preparations were made, this move would hide all the aura, killing intent, and even the sword master's own life force and divine thoughts. Everything would be hidden. It was like the strange and terrifying calm before the storm. The fourth technique, however, was a murderous maniac. It was after the foreshadowing of the first three techniques. Suddenly, thunder and lightning erupted. It was as if the clear sky had completely collapsed at this moment and the earth had completely collapsed at this moment. All the battle power. At this moment. All of them were fully unleashed. Murderous maniac. This technique was completely unexpected. But its power was the sum of the four techniques. In fact, it was even more powerful. This was definitely the most insidious and vicious of the four sword techniques in the Tribulation Sword technique. Such insidiousness and treachery made Chu Yang, the sword master, break out in cold sweat after he understood these four sword techniques. As Chu Yang memorized these four sword techniques, the Tribulation Sword suddenly disappeared from his hand. Hey, I haven't finished using it yet? Chu Yang was very surprised. This sword tongue is not very obedient? This is the habit of the sword tongue. He first went to take a look at the place where he lives. His brothers accompanied him to visit his new home. The sword spirit rolled his eyes. He was speechless at this guy's lack of experience. Indeed, after a while, sword light flashed and the Tribulation Sword automatically appeared in Chu Yang's hand. Chu Yang could feel a faint sense of joy coming from the Calamity Sword. As if the sword tongue was saying, "Not bad, I'm barely satisfied." Yes. It was expressing its sincere respect to the sword master. And a faint apology. I didn't expect it to be unexpectedly good. Fuck. Chu Yang cursed in his heart. If you're still not satisfied with my Dantian, there probably won't be a new home in this world that can satisfy you. Since he had already taken out the sword tongue, Chu Yang naturally wouldn't let go of the rest. He reached out and touched the place where the sword tongue was. It was slippery. It seemed to be very soft to the touch, but in fact, it was so hard that it made one's hair stand on end. Chu Yang felt that even star iron might not be much harder than the rocks here. Yet it gave off a soft and slippery feeling. And in this soft and slippery feeling, there was actually wind and thunder surging. Chu Yang raised his hand and the sword fell. Large rocks were kicked down the deep valley by him. Now that he had the sword tongue, Chu Yang no longer had any qualms. He drank a mouthful of the wine left by Shui Leihan and 2 mouthfuls of spiritual spring water. Then he started to work energetically. This time he didn't have any qualms. With a swing of his sword, he chopped down several large rocks and threw them down. All the way down there were still such rocks. After chopping down 5,000 feet it was still the same. There were no changes. Even with Chu Yang's cultivation and tenacity, he couldn't help but feel a little tired. It can't all be rocks like this, right? Chu Yang looked up. He couldn't see the sky anymore. Only the heavy snow was still falling. He couldn't help but talk to himself gloomily. He couldn't see the top and bottom. How long would he have to chop for? Definitely not. There will definitely be something good, said the sword spirit with certainty. Alright, I'll admit it. Even if I have to chop down 10,000 feet all the way to the end, even if there's nothing, I'll admit it. Chu Yang gritted his teeth and said fiercely. Another 4 hours passed. Chu Yang almost wanted to slap himself. He had never realized that he had the potential to jinx it. In 4 hours he had chopped down a height of 20,000 feet, but there was still nothing. He saw that half of this stone pillar had already been chopped down by him. The shaking wasn't that big anymore. Fuck, what exactly is this? It's actually hidden so well? Chu Yang cursed. Luckily, it's the Tribulation Sword. If it were any other sword, even Dong Wuxiang's dark saber would have been broken long ago. What strange thing is this? The sword spirit said, besides, even a supreme martial artist can't move it. Chu Yang was shocked. Yes, with the hardness and weight of this place, even if a supreme martial artist had the ability to move mountains and fill seas, to move this stone pillar completely, it was probably impossible. He roused himself and chopped down madly. This time he chopped down 500 feet. After 300 sword strikes in a row, Chu Yang wanted to cry but had no tears to shed. My Jinx mouth is working. because he could already see the ground below. I've really chopped down close to 10,000 feet. Jianghu was a little dizzy. At this moment, a strange change suddenly happened. I'm about to collapse. From morning till now for chapters. Okay, I'll continue to write the 5th chapter. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.